I now declare the 2019 Vernon Town Meeting in order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing. A moment of silence for all of our town residents who have passed on in the last year. Please be seated. Before we continue our meeting, we are privileged to have someone who was elected to the legislature with big shoes to fill. And that's not only because Mike Hebert had big feet. Let's welcome from Guilford, but representing Vernon and Guilford, State Representative Sarah Coffey for a few words.
Thank you, everyone, for the warm welcome. It's great to be here, and it's so great to see so many people here. Town meeting is one of my favorite events in Vermont. I appreciate in Vermont of how we have these forums like town meeting where everyone is welcome to speak their minds and engage in civic dialogue as we review budgets and debate the issues with our neighbors. And I know in Vernon you also enjoy some pretty kick-ass baked goods, pardon my French. So it's a pleasure to be here in Vernon for town meeting, my first town meeting as your state representative. And I appreciate the opportunity to share with you an update from the legislature. And I know I promised to Tim that I wouldn't speak too long because I know you have a big agenda and for tonight. But I also want to let you know I did print out, I'm going to be brief, so I did print up a written update, and I've left them here at this table that you should feel free to grab. So it really is an honor to serve as your state representative in the Vermont Assembly, the People's House, as we like to call it. And over the past year leading up to this, I've really enjoyed getting to know Vernon through the people and the community events here. And I've appreciated the time that people have given me to share their opinions, their ideas, and their concerns and ideas with me. And in the process, I really have fallen in love with Vernon. I've been heartened by how this community, in the wake of the loss of Vermont Yankee, has really been coming together to imagine a new future. I'm excited about the possibilities for a new village center, new recreational possibilities here, and plans for the future of the BY site. These ideas will require a lot of work, creative thinking, and collaboration, and I hope that you will see me as a resource and partner in this work. Together, we can strengthen our economy and build a bright future. So I've been commuting up to Montpelier for 8 weeks now, and much of our work in the legislature happens in the committee room. For the next 2 years, I'll be serving on the House Committee on Corrections and Institutions. And this committee is concerned with corrections policy and the capital bill. The capital bill is our capital budget, which is funded through our bonded state dollars. And this year, because of our downgrade from Moody's, we are working with a smaller capital budget of $123 million over 2 years. Our capital budget funds construction and maintenance of state-owned buildings, parks, land, funds school safety grants, historic preservation, and work in cultural facilities funding, IT infrastructure and state government, clean water funding, state colleges and universities, and more. So it's been a real education, and a lot of interesting work comes through our committee. And as a freshman legislator, it's really an honor to serve on a committee that's both a money and a policy committee, because I feel like I'm able to see how the money moves through our state budget in the State House. So already 8 weeks in, it's hard to believe that we are nearly halfway through the session. Already over 500 bills have been introduced in the House, and once we return after this town meeting week break, we will have 1 week to move things out of committee, bring them to the floor, and get them to the Senate by crossover. So there's a lot of work to do, and we could focus on many issues, and I can talk to you a little bit about the highlights, but I mostly want to talk to you about my priorities going into the session, which have been focused on strengthening our local economy, by developing policies that promote equity and innovation in public education, access to affordable childcare and housing, workforce development, and strategic investments in technology to bring our rural communities up to 21st century speed. You know, our challenge in Vermont is that we're a small state. So whenever we want to do new programs with new funding, you know, we're looking at early child care, and that's going to cost $21 million is the estimate. So we really have to look at, if we want to do this, where do we cut? And as we know, you know, I see a budget as an expression of our priorities, and the work that we do in the legislature really depends on you. And so I encourage you, please, as your state rep, please reach out to me. I'm reachable by email, by phone, and we've been holding wonderful monthly coffee hours, both in Guilford and in Vernon, at the Guilford Country Store and at the Vernon Library. And I encourage you to participate and engage, because really, I am your representative, and I am accessible to you. So I wanted to end by thanking all the volunteers who participate in making our communities great places to work and live. And tonight, I want to recognize an extraordinary individual who has devoted much of her time, energy, and talent to this community. And that individual is Barbara Mosley. So. So many of you know Barbara longer and better than I do, but when I was getting to know this community, it was just so, I went to her talk last April that was put on by the Vernon Historians, and it was just so clear how much this community loves her and values the work that she's done. So I'm going to read this resolution, the State of Vermont, a concurrent House resolution. So this is a House concurrent resolution honoring Vernon's extraordinary resident historian, Barbara Ann Emery Mosley. Whereas Barbara Emery was born in 1928, representing the 10th consecutive generation of her family to reside in Vermont, and whereas her first classroom experience was as a student at Vernon's one-room pond school, and working in public education would become her life's vocation, and whereas this traditional Vermont school provided a solid academic foundation for Barbara Mosley, whose post-secondary education included earning a bachelor's degree from Boston University and a master's degree from Wesleyan University in Connecticut, and whereas early in her career, Barbara Mosley was employed as an art teacher and a school librarian in Massachusetts and Connecticut, and after her 1962 marriage to Roger Stearns Mosley, she returned to her hometown and became Vernon Elementary School's first art teacher. And whereas following her husband's death, Barbara Mosley earned her school librarian certification, and she assumed this new role at the Vernon Elementary School, continuing in the position until she retired in 1994. And whereas Barbara Mosley has a special passion for preserving, writing about, and promoting the history of Vernon, and in 1968, she was a co-founder of the Vernon Historians, Inc., an organization to which she has dedicated much time and love during the past half-century. And whereas Barbara Mosley adheres to the idea that, quote, history doesn't have to be on a grand scale to be meaningful, important, interesting, and useful to this day and age, end quote. And whereas under the auspices of the Vernon Historians, Inc., she transformed an 1848 one-room brick schoolhouse into a local history museum, which exhibits the original schoolroom, a farmhouse kitchen, farm tools, historic photographs, and local artifacts. And whereas an associated project was the restoration of the Pond Road Chapel, the original 1860 home of the Advent Christian congregation, which is now listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And whereas, along with her roles as teacher and historian, Barbara Mosley has served as a Vernon Library Trustee and Town Cemetery Committee member, and she is a lifelong member of and organist of the Vernon Union Church, and is an accomplished artist. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate and House of Representatives that the General Assembly honors Vernon's extraordinary resident historian, Barbara Ann Emery Mosley. And be it further resolved that the Secretary of State be directed to send or deliver this resolution to Barbara Mosley and the Vernon Historians, Inc. Thank you so much, and I'll be here, I think, until unless you meet until midnight. I will be here, and you can catch me. So thank you so much. It's really an honor to serve you.
Thank you very, very much, Representative Coffey. To briefly go over the rules of our meeting, and I would be remiss to not say that this meeting is being recorded by Brattleboro Community Television. You can watch it later this week on cable channel 10 and online at brattleboro.tv.org. For anyone speaking at the meeting, please stand, state your name, and speak directly into the microphone so viewers in the room and at home can hear you. Now, to briefly go over the rules of the meeting. Robert's Rules of Order are the basic rules of order for the meeting, except where Vermont law takes precedence. The public body cannot change Vermont state law, but it can change Robert's rules with a 2/3 vote if you desire. An article must be moved and seconded by the body and then restated by the moderator before it is under consideration and before debate on the article may begin. After the moderator restates the motion, the person who made the motion has the right to speak first on the article. Articles may have only one amendment at a time associated with them, and amendments to an article, likewise, may have only one amendment at a time associated with them. After you've spoken once on a particular article, you will not be recognized a second time during discussion on that article or amendment until all other voters who wish to speak for the first time are given the chance to do so. Now, Robert's Rules only allows a given speaker to speak twice on a motion and limits the duration of speeches to 10 minutes in length. Division of the House may be requested by one voter or after a voice vote, and Vermont state law provides for a paper ballot on the request of 7 or more voters, unless the town has made other arrangements again before or after a voice vote or division of the House. Debate may be cut off by a motion to move the previous question and a 2/3 vote to do so. Now, all motions, remarks, and discussions must be addressed to the moderator. I'll do my best to recognize you in the order that you've raised your hands. You must be recognized to speak, even to move the previous question or to cease debate. After being recognized, please stand up. There's a microphone in the middle of the room. We would request that you use that. If you're not able to stand, we have a handheld that we can pass along, but we would prefer that you use the microphone in the middle of the room. Your speeches must be confined to the merits of the question. You'll not be allowed to engage in personal attacks or on a member of the body or their motives. And remember, Vermont state law prohibits consideration of articles that have not been warned. It means you can't take binding action under the issue of other business and cannot amend warned articles such that they would deal with business that has not been warned. Reconsideration is allowed under Vermont law until a point is reached where the body has begun working on another article. It means that if you voted down an article, a motion can be made to reopen consideration by a person on the prevailing side. Yes, I'll ask you how you voted. However, once the next article is on the floor, no more action can be taken regarding the previous article at this meeting. My role as a moderator is to help you accomplish the business you intend to do. Now, please raise your hand and ask questions if you don't understand what's going on, or if you think what's happening is wrong for some reason, or if you want to do something or you aren't sure how to proceed. Please tell me if I'm ruling unfairly, as you have the right to challenge the moderator's ruling. Only registered voters of the town may vote at annual or special meetings of the town. Now, I'm going to also extend the opportunity to speak to members of the administration for both the school and the town, unless there's objection from the body, because they may have knowledge that could be useful to a question at hand. Anyone else can speak who is not a resident of the town, provided we receive consent of the body or by a 2/3 vote. With that all stated, I would tell you that we will have Articles 1, 2, and 3 voting on town articles and the school budget by Australian ballot tomorrow at the town hall from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. Now that the school budget is on Australian ballot, the school board will be allowed to present their budget for this evening. I would like to introduce the school board chair, Carrie Emadon, who will introduce her board and members of the administration who are here tonight. Carrie, make sure you use the microphone.
How close do I need to
Make sure it's on, too.
Oh. Now you're getting technical. Okay, thank you. I've got Chad Mulverhill, we've got Hannah Rosinski, Sandy Morrison, and Walter Bro. Also with us tonight is our principal, Mary Ross, and we've got both Frank Rucker and Sally Brasser from the central office to help us out if need be. So we've got a short presentation for you that we hope will answer a lot of your questions, but then we are happy to answer any more that you might have. So first of all, where do we start? We start by looking at the needs of our 343 students at the same time that we try and balance the affordability for taxpayers. We are reviewing past performances, and we're sort of keeping an eye out as to what's going on up in Montpelier that could impact us financially. We are seeking any operational gains that we can find to help save money. And overall, this is a collaboration between our board, our principal working with her staff, us all working together with the central office. So right now, the bottom line is that our budget is up $232,800. That is a 4% increase over last year's budget. There's three main areas that we want to walk you through that make up most of that increase. The first is secondary tuition. So that is up over last year by $106,000. This is the money that we pay for our 7th through 12th graders to attend school. So this is for BAMS, BUHS, Pioneer. The rates for those tuitions are set either by the receiving school, by BAMS and BUHS, based on a formula, or it is set for out-of-state schools by the state average tuition. The population of our kids in this category has gone up, and therefore the increase in this area. The second area is direct instruction. This is up $44,000. Now this is teachers and staff who are working directly with kids. This increase is due to contractual agreements in salary and health benefits. The top third area is our WSCSU assessment. That is up $25,000. Now this is the money that we pay, as do other school districts in our supervisory union, for support services. So instructional support, professional development, and all of the financial services and administrative services that we get from the SU are in this area. The formula that figures out how we're paying for this is based on our number of kids. So those three areas account for most of this 4% increase that is affecting our bottom line. But why does the ballot say 6.1%? So here's where it gets interesting. The state requires that we report our budget on our ballot based on equalized spending per pupil. So while the census of our kids actually went up this year, last year we had 332 bodies. If you were to line them all up and count them, that's what we have. This year we have 343. But our equalized count of students has gone down. So what's an equalized student? Well, it is a number that the state comes up with that is different from our daily attendance. So pupils are weighted based on certain life circumstances. Preschool kids count for less than high school kids. Middle school kids count for less than high school kids. English language learners, homeless students, students living in poverty count for more than a whole student. This is a number that the state gives to us at some point, and we therefore use it to figure out our equalized per spending. So when our equalized kids go down, unfortunately, our per pupil spending goes up.
There are two other issues that we didn't get good numbers on this year, unfortunately. The first is the common level of appraisal. So for our town, it went down. Last year it was 112%. Right now we're looking at 107%. This is set by the state, and it's intended as a market correction. So it's to ensure that you're paying your taxes based on the fair market value of your house and not the assessed value. And finally, budget does not equal education spending. You need to take out your revenues. And there was a federal Medicaid grant that was no longer available. So our revenues went down. So for those three areas, we got bad numbers this year, unfortunately. We still have to build a budget that works for our kids, though, and that's what we believe we have done. So to put it in perspective, and this is where we might confuse you even more, but hopefully not, last year, our ballot said that equalized per pupil spending was down 8.2%. This year, we're telling you that it is up 6.1%. And we've already told you that's because our bottom line is up 232,000. So there's one more line I can fill in here. I'm curious if anyone has any ideas what it's going to say. Here's the shocker. Last year, when our budget said our equalized spending was down 8.2%, our bottom line was up 1.6 million. Now that is because last year we removed ourselves from BUHS number 6. We had a larger increase in the bottom line, but we also got to count all of those kids. So our equalized student number went way up. So again, our bottom line is up 232,000. What does it mean for you? So overall, the increase in your taxes, if you have a $200,000 home, is looking at $161 per year. That is the overall increase in your education taxes. Now, this is the amount that you would pay if you're among the 30% of Vermonters who pay based on their assessed value and not on income. Most Vermonters pay on income. In Vernon, it's actually 66.8%. Pay a reduced tax rate based on income. So this $161, as far as a $200,000 house goes, is the maximum amount that someone would pay in an increase. There's two other things we want to go over just to keep you informed of what's going on, and this is something we as a board are always looking at. Act 46. So right now, Vernon is going to remain our own school district. As of July 1st, nothing changes for us. Putney, Dummerston, Guilford, and Brattleboro will be merging if there is no legislative action or legal action. They will merge. We will remain on the side as our own district. And for now, for the time being, according to the Secretary of Education, we will remain in the WSESU. So the Windham Southeast Supervisory Union, for now, will remain, and we will be part of it. The next issue we're really looking forward at seeing coming our way is Act 173. So this is a change to how special education is funded. The state is going to move things from a reimbursement system to a census-based model. Now, as with any act, there's good and there's bad. The good seems to be that we will have more flexibility in how we use special education funds. We'll see what happens. Mary is already looking forward to how we use our staff, how we can use them most wisely in preparation for this coming down the pike. This year, the state is going to be setting the rates, and then I believe the program goes into effect in FY21. So this is the next issue that is on the horizon for us. We are happy to answer questions, whether they be tonight or at any time. All of our emails and all of our phone numbers are up on the WSESU website. Feel free to contact us anytime. If you forget about the ESU website, call Tim. He'll get you in touch with any of us. But we're happy to answer questions.
Questions for the school board on Article number 3? Any questions out there? Seeing none, oh, there's a question there. Please go to the microphone in the center of the room, then state your name and ask your question.
Hi, my name is Kristen Dietrich, and you were saying that one of your sources of revenue was lost, the funding, and I was wondering if you had looked into other grants or sources of funding, if that was something that was available to the budget.
I
Go
would
ahead.
say that we're very lucky to be in the SU that we are. I know that they are constantly looking at all sources of federal, state, whatever grants there are. So this is something that we do sort of on an SU level, where we've got really talented professional people who are in touch with what's out there. So yes.
Thank you. Can I ask another question?
Yeah, go ahead. I'll allow you one follow-up.
Okay, and the other thing is, you talked, in your budget, you talked about what went up, and most of it seemed like it was out of your control. Do you have numbers about whether the parts of the budget that you could control, whether it was level funded this year, or if it went down, and if so, how did that that side of the budget look?
Actually, I think, and Mary, is it all right if Mary mentions something after?
Yes,
Okay.
in fact, if she's willing to, she's more than welcome.
As far as the level funding, this is a budget that is as level funded as possible to continue to give the services that are increasing to all of our students. We have had a couple savings in that we've been in the middle of a lighting project that is now ended. So that was a nice, we didn't have to fund the lighting project, and that was $10,000. We are hoping to start to see the benefits of the solar array. We're hoping for a 10% reduction in our electricity. We decided to go conservative. Hopefully it's actually going to come in at more. So wherever we can look at those efficiencies, we're doing it.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. And then Mary, did you have something on?
There's another, you can use one of those wires. Go ahead.
I just want to address both of your questions too. So the piece about the grant funding, off the top of my head, I can't name the grant specifically, but as Carrie alluded to, there are several grants that we're able to take advantage of that come through Paul Smith from our Curriculum Assessment Office through the Windham Southeast Supervisory Union. For example, one that I can recall allowed us to purchase about $10,000 worth of math materials this year. The same grant allowed us to bring in a specialist in math instruction, several $1,000s that she is paid for her work in order to provide some professional development for our teachers. So very little professional development costs came out of our local budget this year, and I anticipate that happening next year as well due to his work and our collaborative work. Then the second piece is what's within our control. There are some small increases with respect to staffing, which we've really evaluated carefully as a school board and as a staff to say, this is what we really think we need to meet the needs of our kids and the changing needs of our kids and the growing needs of our kids. And we try to look at it as how can we support them to be as successful as possible so that we can keep them here at Vernon so that they can have the best possible level of education that we expect in our community. So kind of those two pieces.
Okay, thank you very much.
Of course.
Any further questions for the school board on Article 3? Seeing none, we'd like to thank the members of the school board and declare a brief recess so we can change out the board and bring the select board on to continue our warning. We're in recess. Could we have the select board up at the front table? Select board up at the front table, please. Select board up at the front table, please. We are back in order. Could the select board please take their seats up front? So again, thank you for the opportunity to come and address these issues tonight at town meeting. Time for the select board part of the agenda. And with that, I'd like to introduce our select board chair, Josh Unruh, who will introduce the members of the board and administration. You want to use that one? Okay.
I'll come here. How's that?
Okay.
Hey everybody, how you doing? So as Tim stated, I'm Josh Unruh, I'm the select board chair. To my left is Jeff Dunkley, Gene Carr, who is our clerk, Sandy Harris, who is our vice chair, and Christopher Parker. So as you're looking at your town reports this year, you'll notice that we dedicated the annual report to the work of all of our local volunteers. Each of our local volunteers make a difference within our community. Your generosity has a profound and lasting impact on our community, and your willingness to share your time and your talents volunteering in our town is always appreciated. Our community relies heavily on the generosity of our volunteers. They serve on government boards, committees, they coach, teach our kids, they serve in nonprofits, and they make a huge impact here in Vernon. We know you choose to volunteer selflessly and without expectation of being recognized or rewarded, but this evening we wanted to let you know just how much your dedication is appreciated and how grateful we are to each one of you. There are too many volunteers to mention, but if you volunteer for a local government board, give your time to recreation programs, the library, lead a scout troop, or give your time to one of the many nonprofit organizations in our community, or are a member of a club or a group that gives back to our community, or just someone that's willing to lend a hand, please rise so you can accept our sincere thanks for your service. Don't be shy. So in addition, the Select Board and the Planning Commission would like to recognize our Town Administrator, Michelle Pong, as well for her work over the course of this last year. This position has become invaluable in the day-to-day operations of the town, from fulfilling multiple board and committee requests for information and keeping the Select Board abreast of the constant changes and opportunities coming down from the State House. I'm confident without this position and the dedication Michelle shows to our town that we would not have accomplished all that we did within this year. We have a little something from Michelle. Patty's going to speak on behalf of the Planning Commission.
For those who don't know me, I'm Patty O'Donnell, and I serve presently on the Planning Commission. I just have to say, I've been around town for a couple of years and served in a lot of different capacities. I've watched the Planning Commission struggle through a town plan over and over and over again, some years taking 4 and 5 years to finish the town plan. This year, we had a record in Vernon. We did our town plan in 1 year. And it wasn't because of the hard work of the Planning Commission, it was because of the hard work of Michelle. Michelle is there for all of us. We call her up and we say, Michelle, we need this, and it's done before we even finish talking. I think one of the biggest assets we have in this town right now is Michelle, and I thank her deeply for the great work that she's done for the Planning Commission and for the town of Vernon.
Thank you, Mr. Unruh and Mrs. O'Donnell. We would like to now move on to Article number 4. And the question is, shall the voters authorize the total general fund expenditure for operating expenses of $1,831,995, of which $1,538,295 shall be raised by taxes and $293,700 by estimated income? Chair would recognize Mr. Unruh.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters authorize the total general fund expenditure for operating expenses of $1,831,995, of which $1,538,295 shall be raised by taxes and $293,700 by estimated income.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the voters authorize the total general fund expenditure for operating expenses of $1,831,995, of which $1,538,295 shall be raised by taxes and $293,700 by estimated income. Mr. Unruh, do you wish to speak to your motion?
I do. We actually have a PowerPoint presentation. Ian, if I could get the wireless, that would be awesome. So I'm gonna try not to read these slides because I know everybody is literate and can handle it. But the budget presentation that we're about to go through reflects anything that was changed by $1,000 or more. Anything that was different from that, we don't have a presentation slide on because it wasn't a significant enough change for us to look at. As we go through these slides tonight, you'll see an increase in salary and FICA. It's not because everybody got a raise, it's because of leap year. So that changed everybody's salary for every department. Questions are encouraged following the presentation. Really like to try to get through this and then ask questions after, please. So the select board budget we can see is a decrease of 3.8% this year. The majority of that decrease came from the select board administrative assistant line. Last year was $6,000, this year's $3,000. A little change in legal services and a little increase in travel and training for those of us that attend conferences. And pretty much everybody on the select board has attended a conference at some point over this last fiscal year, and hopefully we'll do it again. Town clerks is a small increase over last year, mainly due to the salaries for the leap year and marriage license expenses, which is a fairly new licensing fee from the state. Thank you very much. It costs more to get married, it's crazy. So the Planning Commission notes, the Windham Regional Commission the Windham Regional Commission assessment, $6,000 is for matching grant funds. So essentially what we try to do is we try to get as many grants as we possibly can, and you need a little bit of seed money to get most grants. Now, we could use $2,000 out of this grant fund. We can use all $6,000 out of this grant fund. Sometimes it's matching. Sometimes it's just a portion that we need. Sometimes there's no matching needed at all, but it really just depends on the grant that we're trying to reach. You'll see this on slides throughout. What I go through is this matching grant fund line, and that's a new one to everybody, but that's because we're trying to get more free money. So the Recreation Department saw a decrease this year by 1.4%. There is an increase in the maintenance repair side. If you see the 1,050 to the 4,050, that is to replace the double doors on the front of the pool house. So those double doors have seen their life expectancy, and they need to be replaced. That's what that $3,000 increase is for, but overall a decrease. The school rental fee went up as a COLA increase this year of 2.8%. Buildings and grounds. I don't know if anybody remembers last year, but we were able to put that that groundskeeping number down to $0 because we worked with the school board on getting them to pay for the lawn cutting at the town office. Through a very long process, we found out that that's just not possible. So we put it back into the budget this year, so there's no real change. $6,000 went from the school side back to the town side because we had to. The little increase in the building repair and maintenance is to strip and re-wax half of the lower floor of the town office. So you'll see that increase from $8,000 to $10,250. That's what that is for. So the van driver saw a little bit of a decrease this year, and it's not because we're reducing hours or anything else. We just simply don't spend the $10,000 every year. So we pulled it out of there because it doesn't get spent. It doesn't get used. Contracted public safety went from $70,000 to $50,000 this year at a 28% decrease. All the available hours for the sheriff's department are up there, per hour charge by contract level. The fire department saw a couple changes this year too. One of the biggest changes that I was personally pretty proud of is the assistant fire chief stipend. Our assistant fire chief hasn't got anything. I don't know if it's in the history, but it hasn't been. It's been a very long time. Our current assistant fire chief, Keith Franklin, has done a ton of work in working with Todd to improve things at the firehouse, and we felt that his work deserved rewarded. So $1,000 was added to the budget for a stipend for him. Again, the matching grant money that we talked about previously. That $1,000 for the assistant chief, by the way, you'll see on the next slide, came from a different emergency management budget. If we're going to switch over to that one. So under public safety, we had the sirens maintenance batteries. So those were all the sirens that used to be tested every Thursday. You guys remember when that used to happen? Hasn't happened in probably a year, maybe even longer. So the select board sat down with our emergency management director, Dave, and we also sat down with Todd, our fire chief, and decided that it just wasn't needed anymore. Between Vermont Alert and all the other things that are available out there for you to understand when there's an emergency, the sirens just aren't an effective priority for us anymore. In addition, the folks that we had a contract with to maintain the sirens can't even test them. From where they are, they can't test them, they can't do anything with them. So we removed that as a line item from the budget, essentially took part of that money and gave the assistant fire chief a stipend, and still ended up with a decrease. Pretty self-explanatory. Salt went up. Safety equipment's down by $1,000 for the town garage. It's because we have more salt, so they can't slip and fall. And that's all I got, Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Unruh. Unless there's objection from the body, it's going to be the moderator's prerogative to ask for discussion on the town budget by department. And seeing no objection, we'll go down by department and ask for questions for the select board or administration on the various departments. We'll start off with the town clerk's office. Any questions there? Seeing none. Town treasurer's office. Any questions there? No questions. Lister's office. Any questions? No questions there. Select Board and/or general expenses. Any questions? There is a card in the back. Please come to the center of the room and thank you for doing that. Please state your name and your question.
Faith Jobin. I think it was under general expenses. I didn't write it down. The stripping of the floors downstairs at the town office building, I was wondering if it went out for bid, and I was wondering if the cost is a firm cost or if it can be downgraded.
The board is queried. Mr. Unruh.
So yes, that is a firm cost to do half the floors. There's no padding in it, I guess you would say. That's what they told us it would cost for them to come do the work.
Who's doing the work?
Stellar Cleaning.
And did it go out to bid?
You're asking a lot of great questions that I just don't remember the answer to. No, I don't believe it did go out to bid.
Shouldn't it have gone out to bid?
Sure. I mean, what's the town policy is to put everything out to bid. If we don't have someone that has the ability to do it, or there's not 3 companies that do it, then we run into a situation where we work with who we have.
So you go with the higher price.
They were the
Mrs. Pong has a, if there's another microphone here, or attempt to answer the question. Mrs. Pong, you're recognized.
When we were looking for somebody to do the floors, I called every single person I could find in the Yellow Pages and on the internet, and they were the only ones that could do the job. So they were the only ones that were willing to come out to even give us an estimate, so that's what I
That's what I mean when we have a 3-bid policy within the town. If we don't have 3 bids, we go with what we have. And that was the bid that we had to do the work.
It seems like a lot of money for the floors. We hardly ever use the downstairs. It's,
Square footage wise, it's a very big job. That downstairs is fairly large.
I understand that, but never mind. I don't want to get into a pissing contest, sorry.
That's fine.
Mrs. Pong, you have further elucidation on the question?
The initial price on the floor was a great deal less when this project first began. However, when the strippers started doing it, it was realized that the floors have not been stripped probably for 10 to 15 years. Therefore, there are multiple layers of wax, so the project is a lot larger than anybody anticipated, and that's why the price is probably more than it should have been had this work been being done on a regular basis.
Further questions on Select Board and general expenses? Person in the center of the room, please stand and address the mic.
Mark Parker. You say that's half the floor?
It's half the basement floor, yes.
At 28, if I'm correct, $28,000 for half a job? How much was the whole floor then?
Mrs. Pong?
Maybe this is part of the confusion. Of that expense, only the $2,500 increase was the floor. It's not the whole, what was it, 10,250? So it's the 2,250 over our original $8,000 budget from last year. So $2,250 will be half of the downstairs floor.
Why not the whole floor?
The whole floor was at $4,500. So rather than do it all in 1 year, the Select Board elected to spread that project out into 2.
I'm sorry, but when you do a project, you start from, you do the whole thing. You don't do half a project.
The
And then
Select Board is
expect us
clear.
next year to come and get more money to do the other half.
So you are welcome to raise the budget to do the whole project if you're wanting to do that, obviously. The cleaning company that we're working with, Stellar, told us essentially that they really didn't want to do the entire job in one sitting because it's going to take them so long as well to do the project because there's 10, 12 layers of wax on the floor. if you spend any time or come down to the select board room, you'll see the little corner where they started working on the floor, and then walked away from the project and said, we're not even gonna do this, because it was so bad. And they spent, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 hours on about a 5 by 10 area, trying to strip what was there and get to a point where they could re-wax the floor. So, but like I said, it's completely up to the townsfolk. If they want to do this whole project, then we can do it.
Just seems like a lot of money to me.
It is a lot of money. You're absolutely correct.
Further questions on Select Board and general expenses? Seeing none? Oh, we see one over here. Please come to the microphone.
Heather Frost. I was just wondering, I would like to look at the sheriff department's numbers again.
That will be coming
Oh, okay.
in time. That's why we're going department by department. So, anything further on planning? Seeing none, we'll move to recreation. Any questions on recreation? Person in the back of the room, please come to the microphone.
Munson Hicks. A simple question based on what you stated. How does the school rental be subject to a cost of living adjustment? A rental is what it is.
Well, the select board doesn't set that cost. It's actually set by the school board and then brought to us for approval. The budget, or that particular line item, hasn't changed for 2 years. So this is the first time that we've seen an increase. We call it a COLA increase. It's obviously not really a COLA increase, but that's the measure that's been used right along, so we continue to use that measure, or the school board continues to use that measure to give us the number for the school rental.
Okay, thank you.
Anything on recreation? If not, we'll move to building and grounds. Building and grounds, any questions there? If not, we'll move to cemetery. Anything on cemetery? If not, we go to town van. Do you have a question on? Yes. Okay, come on back up. And since this is a different area of the budget, we will allow you a first comment on this area.
Once again, I'm Munson Hicks. In looking at the auditor's report, the cemetery funds are listed by amount. And whereas here in the report, initially they're listed by number of shares. So number one, it would be convenient if in the town report, we actually had direct knowledge of the amounts. By my counting, we have about $100,000 in the various cemetery funds. And I'm wondering, we're still asking for another $10,000. Are we ever going to spend the money that's in the funds? And secondly, the question, and I don't know who this goes to, is those funds are with Edwards. And I'm wondering if they're held in managed funds or index funds, because as we know, index funds are far cheaper and generally return a better investment.
The Select Board down to administration is queried. Is there someone here who could answer that question?
I'm going to defer to the cemetery committee on those questions. If somebody can speak to that, please.
Cemetery committee is queried if it so chooses. Mrs. Sherlin.
I can answer part of that question. Part of, if you look at this, the Tyler Fund and the North, on those parts, the money to pay for the caretaking of those two cemeteries is coming out of the funds. That's not being raised by taxes. Those are coming out of the funds because there is enough money to do that. The remaining cemeteries do not have enough in their funds for us to be able to take out to do the caretaking. I'm going to defer to the treasurer to answer about the funds, how they're being held.
Mrs. Turnley.
Cindy Turnley, Town Treasurer. Some of the funds are invested in American funds. There's Putnam funds, mass investors, and I know we have some that are in bonds, which I think if Gordon Christensen is here.
He is.
Hey, Gordon.
Hi.
Can you answer?
Sure.
Mr. Christensen is queried if he so chooses.
Gordon Christensen. To answer Mr. Hicks's questions, when Edward Jones began managing the funds instead of People's Bank, one of the stipulations was that we had to maintain the same fund families. So for many years, the two fund families that have been in those cemetery funds had been American funds and Putnam funds. They are managed. They are not indexed funds, but based on the stipulation of taking over the account, we couldn't move into any other types of investments. So, as Cindy stated, absolutely correct. American funds, Putnam funds, or some MFS funds as well, and then federal bonds.
Thank you. Further questions on the cemetery? Unless there's no one else who wishes to speak, Mr. Hicks, you'll be recognized for a second time.
I guess my follow-up question is, what does it take to relieve Edward Jones from being held to those funds? Is that something that the Selectboard needs to talk to versus the cemetery fund, or who? Because, you know, I haven't seen the figures, but in general, index funds do better, and they're far cheaper. So is this something that the Selectboard needs to vote on, or can look into, or somehow answer that?
Select Board or Cemetery Committee is Mrs. Turnley.
Cindy Turnley, Town Treasurer. Several years ago, quite a few years ago, we made the decision to invest more risky, and we lost a lot of money, and the townspeople did not like that. So the townspeople said we want to be a little safer with the way we invest our money, so that we went back to doing it a safer way, so that we weren't going to lose a whole lot of money like we did that one time.
You've spoken twice on this particular question, Mr. Hicks, already. Anybody else on cemetery? If not, we'll move on to Mr. Dunkley. You wish to speak?
Mr. Hicks, you are correct in the fact that index funds are cheaper than an actively managed fund. And I agree, it's something sometime in the future that Select Board needs to consider.
If there's no further questions on cemetery, we'll move to town van. Any questions on town van? No questions there. We'll move to historians. Any questions on the historians' budget? No questions there. We'll move to contracted public safety. Questions on contracted public safety? Do I see any questions there? Heather, this was the one you were asking about. So, Ms. Frost, you are recognized. Please come to the microphone.
I'm wondering if there's any, I see a decrease in the number of hours, and is there any hidden costs associated with that? Is it just like 19 hours, that's it? Or it'd be,
Select Board is queried if it wishes to be.
how does that work? How does your contract work?
Hey, Michelle, can you put the slide back up for contracted services, please? So if you look at the slide, it's all based on an hourly rate. So for this last fiscal year, our hourly rate was $33.65, and we got 40 hours a week for our $70,000. The same investment this year would come at $40.65 per hour. So we dropped down a little bit lower to 19 hours per week, which again turned up the hourly rate to $51 per hour at 19 hours a week to make it a $50,000 total budget. There are some call-out costs and things like that if we have that issue or that need arise. We, as far as I know, have not seen any additional costs throughout the course of this year for extra hours for call-outs that were above and beyond our contract. I could be wrong in that, but I am not aware of any, and the treasurer is shaking her head no, and she pays the bills, so we have not seen any additional hidden fees, so to speak, for call-outs because we haven't needed them outside of our normal hours. And the state police have been responding quite well to us as well.
Further questions on contracted public safety? Mr. Wielden, you raised your hand first. Please come to the microphone.
John Wielden. Why are we dropping the hours of service? It seems like it's been doing quite well this past year at 40 hours.
Select Board is queried.
Other than money.
Because
Mr. Parker.
at the same 40 hours, it went up to, I believe it was $86,000 this year. We saw an almost 33% increase in that to keep the same amount of coverage.
Further questions on contracted public safety? Mrs. Henke, could you please come to the microphone?
Sue Henke. I would just like to know what you expect the sheriffs to do 19 hours a week.
Select Board is queried.
We would expect them to do the same things that they've been doing, patrolling our roads and... Sure.
Further questions on the area of contracted public safety? The young lady over here in the corner, and then I'll go more toward the center.
Taylor Jobin. With 19 hours, I'm just wondering, are we still going to have them at the school at pickup and drop off? I mean, summer's going to happen. We have the rec department. It just seems like a huge drastic cut with so many young kids in town.
Select Board is queried if it wishes.
I suppose that would be up to the discretion of the sheriff's department. However, I pick my son up from the elementary school every day, and there is certain days that there is no coverage there, and I drive by the town office and I see the sheriff sitting there. So I'm not sure that we're getting exactly what you're asking for. I'm not sure that we're getting that now with the 40-hour coverage.
Further questions? The young lady at the back of the room, please come, and I'll hit the front of the room next.
Kelly Wunsch. I'm also one of the bus drivers here in Vernon. And one of the things that I'm seeing more and more of is people just driving through our lights. And I think that we either need more sheriff protection to man our roads, or we need to bring back our own police force.
Further discussion on contracted public safety. The lady in the front, did you wish to speak? Please go to the microphone, state your name.
I'm Paula Ewan. I guess I don't understand why we're wasting, in my eye, wasting money in some departments, and we're paying, we're paying the bulk of taxes as well as you all are, but I don't understand why our community's protection is being dropped. We're paying taxes. I'd rather see an increase in the police department than a $10,000 increase in floor being polished or whatever. But that's just my take. I think we need more coverage. And if there's someone here who can answer, like, how many arrests or incidents there have been, I guess that would go to the sheriff's department, so he could explain that.
So I guess I'll answer the first part of that question. Everybody has to recognize that when we don't have coverage from the Windham County Sheriff's Department, we always still have coverage from the Vermont State Police. We are never without police coverage. I think if you talk to any law enforcement officer on the state side, they'll say, we'll be there. But I don't know about everybody else in the room, but I've seen additional troopers in town more than I've seen in a very long time this last year. I see them sit at the Seventh-day Adventist Church running speed traps where they hadn't been there before. They seem to be doing a really good job filling in the hours, or maybe even at the same time as the Sheriff's Department, and protecting our town. So I don't believe that we're having a decrease in coverage. I think the coverage is happening in a different way.
You're cutting it in half. We pay for the state PD also, is that correct, out of taxes? Is that correct?
It comes out of your state taxes, yeah, it doesn't come out of town, yeah.
But, again, I agree with Mrs. Wunsch. It would be cheaper for us to have our own police department back.
Our own police department, and forgive me because it's been a few years since we talked about our own police department.
No, I know that,
Was about
but I'm saying
$500,000 a year.
not at the level that it was, of course.
Well,
Of course,
it's not
but-
necessarily the level of coverage when you have an in-house police department. It's the infrastructure. It's the cars, it's the equipment.
Right, right.
It's all those things
Right.
that add up to the expense. And salaries and
Right.
all those kind of things that now become the burden of the town. I think there's a reason that we moved away from that, and that was the reason.
I guess I think maybe in my estimation, our priorities are kind of messed up a little bit in that area, but thank you.
We have someone over in the corner here. The gentleman with the voter card gets recognized first. If you want to be recognized, hold up your voter card. Next person is in the back of the room, then him, and then in the back corner. So if you want to line up, that'd be great. Cut down the amount of walk time. You're recognized.
Jonathan Hall. The statement that you see a lot of VSPD in town is not because they're patrolling, it's because they live here. We have 7 state police officers who live in town. You're seeing them traveling to work. If we need them for the response, we're told 1 hour minimum, unless there's gunplay. 1 hour minimum. People also have to realize that the VSPD isn't going to do courtesy calls for the elderly to see if they're okay. We had one family in town where her daughter couldn't get through to her parents, and she lives out in Ohio. They couldn't get the police to go. VSPD wasn't going. The sheriff's department wasn't on duty at the time because their hours were up for that day. So they ended up calling the fire department to go out and check. I really think that we need to have the sheriff's department not cut to 19 hours, but increase to 20 hours a day. And I'd like to make an motion to do that.
Could you state again your motion?
I want to make a motion to increase the number of hours to 20 hours a day for the sheriff's department.
It has been moved and seconded that,
now, they're only doing less than 8
hold on, there's only one person that talks. It's either me or the person I recognize, nobody else.
Sorry.
Thank you. So I want to make sure that I have this motion correct. The proposal of amendment is to increase the sheriff's department to 20 hours of contracted service per day. Could we possibly get a budget impact on that? Mrs. Turnley.
Cindy Turnley, Town Treasurer. For 20 hours a day, 7 days a week, at a rate of $40.62 per hour, it would be $295,713.60.
Discussion on the amendment as proposed by Mr. Hall. You made the amendment. Do you wish to speak further, or?
Yes, I would. Yes, it's going to go up by what she stated, but if everybody remembers last year, to keep the 20 hours that we had prior to that, it was only increasing our individual property taxes by $15. Now that we're down to 40 hours a week, which equals to 8 hours a day for 5 days, yeah, we're going to have to raise it, and our taxes are going to have to go up to cover it. But we need the coverage. The elderly need it. The volunteers need it for protection. We don't have that protection at night when we go out.
We do have a number of people who wish to speak.
Okay. I'm done.
We're going to take the line, and then we'll take the comments from the board. Mr. Gant.
Andrew Gant. Looking at the numbers, I question if the sheriff's department actually did enough during the 40 hours that they had. I would like to make an amendment that we move them to 0 and just have VSB cover.
We have an amendment on the floor. If that proposal of amendment is defeated, we will entertain your amendment.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Mr. Hankey.
Mark Hankey, as a retired police officer and living in this community for several years now, I really have to say that 40 hours a week was not enough time for me to do what I had to do back in the days. I was raised, my father was a highway patrol officer out in California, and he didn't come home on time a lot of the times. And I do believe that the Sheriff's Department has done a fair justice to everybody in this community, young and old. And I'm not as young as I used to be, but I see a lot of young people and they need help. I see a lot of older people and they need help. I think everybody needs to look at this and say, maybe a little bit more taxes for the protection. You can't afford to have somebody get hurt or die. There's still break-ins in this community. And I tell my wife, I said, somebody comes in this house, they're not going to leave. So the fire department will be called, so will the EMTs. But I do think that 40 hours a week should stay, and I would like to make an amendment to put it back up to 40 hours a week.
We need to deal with this first amendment before these other amendments get dealt with. So your amendment proposal is not in order at this time.
Okay.
We'll come to you and Mr. Gant once we get this amendment dealt with.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ryan Teets. I guess I have a question on, does the select board tell the sheriff's department what they expect So I heard that they're not at the school all the time, and somebody saw them at the office at the town hall. Why aren't we giving them the direction if that's what is expected of our sheriff's department? That's the first. And the second is the increase. Did you look into what that increase over the rate last year was? 30, you said it was over 30%. What is it based on? Did they come back to us and tell us why they're increasing it by 30%?
Because costs across the board.
Please, Mr. Parker, wait till you're recognized, sir. Are you all done?
Yes, sir.
Chair would recognize Mr. Unruh, then Mr. Parker.
So as far as the direction of the Sheriff's Department, for the Select Board to direct the Sheriff's Department in any way is a breach of contract, they have it right in their contract that we are not allowed to direct them in any way how they do their job. Where they go, what they do, anything is a breach of contract. So no, we can't. We can make nice suggestions, but even if we did that, we'd still be in breach of contract with the Sheriff's Department. We're not allowed to direct them in any way, shape, or form. And what was the second part of your question?
About the 30% increase?
We were told that the 30% increase was because we've gotten such a good deal all along and there's continued increased expenses on their side, so therefore Vernon received a 33% increase over last year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Parker, you
Josh,
you all set?
That's fine.
Chair would recognize the young lady here.
Oh, thanks for that. Norma Manning, I can't speak on behalf of the school, but I do work at the school. When we have an incident at the school, and recently we had a day when we came in and the front doors had been vandalized, I heard rumor that they had been shot out. I'm unsure whether that is true or not, and I work in the school. Later in the day, we had a partial lockdown drill in the school where the kids were brought. I was out on the playground and they had to be brought in a hurry into the school, and we gathered into the cafeteria. Thanks to the professionalism of the staff, the kids were not really aware of what was going on, for as far as they knew it was a bear on the playground. I just want to know that as someone who's on the front line for helping to keep our children safe, that there's going to be an officer there should that one day happen. I'm part of the emergency medical team. I'm going to be taking a class here quickly on how to control bleeding from mass casualties. That's not a position that I want to be in alone. I don't know what the answer is to how much the town wants coverage here, but when that lockdown happens, I want to know that someone's here.
Again, we are discussing the amendment by Mr. Hall, and please keep your comments germane to that amendment.
Shelley Harvey. I would like to ask if the Sheriff's Department can speak to whether there are different levels of coverage available and what those would entail.
That's what's displayed on the board, but Captain Anderson can answer those questions as well, I'm sure.
At this point, we would recognize Captain Anderson.
Good evening. So the letter that's on the screen above, Mark Anderson, I think I know a lot of you. Some of you might be new faces, but I used to lead the Vernon division down here back in 2014 when we first took over. That was a wholly separate structure than what's on the board here. It was our understanding by the direction of the board that they were looking towards the lower level of service, which is pretty much what most of our towns in Windham County go with. So the numbers on the board are not really directed towards a 20-hour-a-day service. They're designed for a single person. It has to build in cost of supervision, cost of dispatch. This is not representative of a 24-hour police service.
Further discussion on the proposal of amendment by Mr. Hall. Mrs. Sternley.
I need to give you a corrected number for that amendment.
Thank you.
It is 295,932.00.
Further discussion on the proposal of amendment? Mr. Parker, make sure you use your voter card, sir.
Mr. Hall, I would just like to,
Please address your comments to the moderator, please.
sorry, the comment about they are an hour out, I spoke with the VSP last week, and they said there is a potential that there is times that it could be an hour, but the reality is that they have troopers in Brattleboro, they have troopers in our town, they have troopers in Guilford. There is police coverage around us, and the likelihood that we're going to be looking at an hour is a slim possibility. So I don't agree with that.
Further discussion on the proposal of amendment? We're going to go to Mr. Unruh, then Mr. Wielden.
So, to Mr. Hall's point, Mr. Moderator, about VSP taking an hour to get here, we had an incident in town because I get a fairly regular call whenever something big happens, and I got one of those calls this year of something that was happening at the post office. In that particular incident, the VSP and the Sheriff's Department showed up at exactly the same time to deal with that particular incident. So that's a very good example of the VSP's availability and our coverage. Again, to what Chris says, that can change. It's, you know, it is what it is. But in the times that we've had an issue, they've been here. We also heard from about call-outs for our elderly folks and needing to call our Sheriff's Department to check on our elderly folks. I understand that's a need, but everybody has a neighbor. Everybody. Call your neighbor and have them check on your family.
Further discussion on the proposal of amendment? Mr. Wielden.
So I think the board needs, I understand, Chris, they're telling you one
Address your
thing.
questions to the moderator, please.
Sorry, Mr. Moderator. They might be telling you one thing. The folks who are already on the line, I can say in the past 3 weeks, we had to wait for VSP or hadn't had to wait for them because they were going to be delayed at least an hour to go deal with patients. So, and that's in the last 3 weeks we've had that issue. So it's more than once, it's more than twice, and it's been a few times throughout the year that we've transitioned over to this new process. So it's not just once.
Remind you all to address your comments and questions to the moderator and not engage in a debate with other members of the assembly. I see a young lady here with a voter card. Come on up.
Can we just call the question?
You need to come up to be able to do that. As I explained in the opening rules, you need to be recognized to even call the question.
Ellen Merkel, can we call the question on the motion?
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded, we cease debate. All those in favor of ceasing debate on the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We will move for a vote on the proposal of amendment to move to a 20-hour per day, 7-day-a-week model for sheriff's coverage at a total cost of $295,932. All those in favor of the... What's that?
Paper ballot?
No. If 7 people stand, you can have a paper ballot. I see 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, we'll have a paper ballot. Get out your paper ballots, people. First ballot, you would mark yes or no. Again, if you want the 20-hour-a-day Sheriff's Department, we're still in order, people. Thank you. If you want the 20-hour-a-day Sheriff's Department coverage, you would vote yes. If you want to reject that and go back to the initial motion, you would vote no. Please line up And bring your voter cards to the ballot box. One of the B.C.A. members will be in the ballot box to take your vote. Please be seated. We're back in order. Listen now to the results of your vote on the proposal of amendment by Mr. Hall. Voting yes, 40. Voting no, 127. I declare the amendment has been defeated. Chair will now recognize Mr. Gant for purposes of making an amendment.
Mr. Moderator, Andrew Gant.
Mr. Gant.
I would like to make the amendment that we put the budget to a 0 for 0 hours a week and allow VSP to take over the remainder of the coverage.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded that we put the budget number to 0 and let VSP handle the coverage. Mr. Gant, will you wish to speak to your amendment?
Yes, I would. As far as courtesy calls, as Mr. Unruh said, we have neighbors. We are a community, and that's what we need to be doing. I personally go to work at 2 o'clock in the morning, and the Sheriff's Department has been covering at 2 a.m. instead of school hours when they should be here. The time's not being used appropriately or wisely, and it would be, I feel we would be better off allowing the state police, who has more funding and more manpower and will not hinder our town taxes as much, would be a much wiser move for us.
Thank you, Mr. Gant. Please, if you want to speak on this amendment or anything else, line up at the microphone. Chair would recognize Mr. Hall, and if anybody else wants to speak, make sure you get to the microphone so we don't waste time here, people. You can line up in back of Mr. Hall if you wish.
Jonathan Hall. Making it 0 hours and relying on the state police is mute. Vermont Legislature voted last year that Vermont State Police can no longer contract with towns for services. So if we go to 0 hours, you're not going to have the state police contracting.
Chair would recognize Mrs. Ewan, and then we'll recognize Mr. Parker and Mr. Unruh. Go ahead.
I'd like to speak to this thing about calling your neighbor. My father sat at his kitchen table for 3 days, and he was totally, he was in insulin shock or whatever you call it. How the heck can you call a neighbor? Just saying. Thank you.
Chair would recognize Mr. Parker.
Mr. Moderator, in regards to Mr. Hall's response, we wouldn't be holding a contract with them. They are the state police, so if they are called and we don't have law enforcement, similar to Guilford, similar to other towns around us that do not hold a law enforcement contract, VSP responds.
Further debate on the article of amendment by Mr. Gant. Young lady?
Elizabeth Ellis. I just want to point out that, yes, we're a small town, but we have, the elementary school has already told us that we have more kids than last year, I think, and we have more high schoolers than last year, and we have 2 senior housing facilities. Not to mention the fact that being rural, not everybody has a close next door neighbor who's going to be home. We all live in mostly dark back roads, but mostly I just wanted to point out the population of our young people is up. There's a drug problem, and we have a lot of senior citizens for a small town.
Further discussion on the article of amendment, Mr. Unruh.
Call the question.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded, we cease debate. All those in favor of ceasing debate, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Again, the article of amendment by Mr. Gant is that we reduce the bottom line on this line item in the budget to $0. All those in favor of the proposal of amendment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The nays appear to have it. The nays have it. The article of amendment has been defeated. Now, who was the other person who suggested that third amendment proposal? Was that you, Mr. Hankey? Please come back and make that other amendment. Let's get this done. And if you want to speak, line up in back of Mr. Hankey.
Mark Hankey. As I said earlier, I would like to make an amendment to make the Sheriff's Department 40 hours a week.
Do I hear a second? Second. Moved and seconded that the sheriff's budget be based upon a 40-hour-a-week schedule. Could we have a dollar amount on that, Mrs. Turnley? We're getting a dollar number on the proposal of amendment.
The dollar would be $84,552.
For a total of $84,562. 52. Mr. Hankey, did you wish to speak on your amendment proposal, or were you all set? All right, further discussion on the proposal of amendment?
Karen Gilbert, I'd like to call the question.
Do I hear a second? Second. Moved and seconded, we cease debate on the amendment proposal. All those in favor of ceasing debate, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. So again, the proposal of amendment would base the contract on 40 hours a week for a total amount of $84,552. All those in favor of the proposal of amendment by Mr. Hankey, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The chair is in doubt. Let's have a standing division of the House. V.S.A, please give us a help. So, again, all those in favor of the proposal of amendment, please stand. That is, please stand or hold your voter card if you can't stand.
I'm abstaining. I'm not outstanding or abstaining. I'm abstaining. Next. You have the right to vote.
Please be seated. All those voting against the proposal of amendment, please rise. Thank you. Please be seated. Please listen to the results of your vote on the proposal of amendment by Mr. Hankey, making the sheriff's contract 40 hours a week. Voting yes, 92. Voting no, 50. I declare the proposal of amendment has passed. Any further, please hold your applause, any further discussion on the contracted public safety portion of the budget? If there is none, we will continue on to fire department. Questions on the fire department? Seeing none, we'll go to questions on other public safety. Questions on other public safety. Seeing none, we'll go to questions on highway, garage, and road equipment. Seeing none, we will go toward a vote on the amended budget. And if we could get final numbers from Mrs. Turnley, we will announce those. Mrs. Turnley.
Cindy Turnley, Town Treasurer. The total budget would be $1,866,547, $293,700 from estimated income, and $1,572,847 raised by taxes.
What was that final figure?
$1,572,847.
Okay, thank you. So the budget as amended would be to authorize total general fund expenditure for operating expenses of $1,866,547, amount to be raised by taxes $1,572,847, and also estimated income of $293,700. Any further discussion on the motion? Back of the room, please come up and come to the microphone.
Melissa Ferris. I keep seeing the matching grant monies. Do we have a total for the matching grants and a figure for how much was raised in grants from last year?
Selectboard and/or the administration is queried.
I'll yield to the town treasurer as far as, or the town administrator, either one, as far as the amount of money and total for matching grants this year.
What that would.
Mrs. Pong.
Michelle Pong, Town Administrator. Are you asking what we're asking for in the budgets for matching grants? Or what we've raised?
The matching grants in this year's budget, and how much was brought in through grants last year?
In this last fiscal year, we brought in, I don't have the total of all the grants that we brought in, but we brought in through matching funds, $24,000, which with a match of 6. So it wasn't a one-to-one match with the planning grant. And we have not used matching funds in any other grants yet because we don't have any. And I would have to look back to see what other grants we've brought in the past 2 fiscal years. I think that my last total that I had was 91,000, something like that, over the last year and a half. But I
If you can
don't
bear-
have a division in front of me.
If you can bear with me just 1 second, I can give you the total, not of this last year, but total of last, from 2016 to May of 2018. We've received a total of $91,503 in total grants, plus an energy planning in kind grant as well. So about $100,000 over the last 2 years we've brought in from grants. I think your other question, which hasn't been answered yet, is $8,000 in total funds for matching grants for this year.
In this budget.
Yeah, I think there's $6,000 that sits on the planning budget, and there's $2,000 that sits in the fire department. And there may be, and there, I think there's $2,000 in the rec, so I think it's 10 in total, if I'm remembering all my budgets correctly, which, Lord help me if I can remember all this.
Further discussion on the budget as amended? Seeing none, we're going to go for a vote. Again, the motion is that voters authorize total general fund expenditure for operating expenses of $1,866,547, along with the amount to be raised by taxes, $1,572,847, total estimated income, $293,700. All those in favor of Article Number 4 as amended, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Article 4 as amended has been passed. We now move to Article Number 5. Shall the voters approve a total library fund expenditure of $82,855 for administration of the Vernon Free Library, for which $76,000 shall be raised by taxes and $6,855 appropriated from the Vernon Free Library Gift Fund? Mrs. Harris.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters appropriate a total library fund expenditure of $82,855 for the administration of the Vernon Free Library, for which $76,000 shall be raised by taxes and $6,855 shall be appropriated from the Vernon Free Library Gift Fund.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate a total library fund expenditure of $82,855 for administration of the Vernon Free Library, for which $76,000 shall be raised by taxes and $6,855 shall be appropriated from the Vernon Free Library Gift Fund. Mrs. Harris, do you wish to speak to your motion?
I'll defer to the library chair, Ms. Lockever.
Board would recognize Mrs. Lockever.
Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Harris. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move to amend Article 5 to read as follows. Shall the voters appropriate a total library fund expenditure of $86,855 for administration of the Vernon Free Library, for which $80,000 shall be raised by taxes and $6,855 shall be appropriated from the Vernon Free Library Gift Fund.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that the article be amended to read as follows. Shall the voters appropriate a total library fund expenditure of $86,855 for administration of the Vernon Free Library, for which $80,000 shall be raised by taxes and $6,855 shall be appropriated from the Vernon Free Library Gift Fund? Do you wish to speak to your amendment?
Yes, Mr. Moderator, very briefly. On behalf of the Library Trustees, I would like to say that thanks to the voters at last year's town meeting, the library has been able to maintain a high level of programs and services this year. This amendment seeks to enable us to continue that commitment to the town while asking for less from the town because the trustees recognize the need for the library to be more financially independent going forward. To meet this goal in fiscal year 2019-2020, we propose appropriating money from the library gift fund. Additionally, we are investing monies from that gift fund, and we are applying for grants to meet special needs, such as buying new computers to replace ones that are nearing the end of their usefulness. These financial actions will continue into the future as well. At this time, Mr. Moderator, I wish to yield the mic to Jean Carr, our library director, for a PowerPoint presentation about the library.
Mrs. Carr, you have the floor.
So we're going to do a little presentation of
Okay. Is the mic on? Good.
a little bit about what our library does. I don't.
No, you don't have control. I have all the control.
Okay. Go ahead. Let her rip. So the collection at the library is about 19,840 items available to everybody, with also unlimited interlibrary loans. Last year, we circulated 11,395 items. There's 794 residents that are members of the library, and last year we averaged about 7 new patrons a month. We've done 195 programs, some meeting weekly, with a total of 1,267 attendees. And the various things we do is we have rhyme time, cribbage, knitting, the coloring group, reading group, summer reading program, floral workshops, and story time at the Recreation Department summer camp. So at the library, we cater to both electronic and traditional readership. Through the Listen Up Vermont program, the patrons have access to 5,238 downloadable audiobooks and 9,552 ebooks. They also have access to 51 databases through Vermont Online Library, and that is through the State Department of Libraries, and Universal Class, which is also through Vermont Department of Libraries. And Consumer Reports Online is available for everybody. So what does the library cost each homeowner? There's two numbers proposed right now. At the $76,000 funding that the Selectboard proposed, it would be $23.36 per 100,000 of assessed property value. The library budget proposed by the trustees would ask for $80,000 in taxpayer money, which would cost $24.59 per every 100,000 assessed property value. Now, your nearest library is Brooks, and that would cost $62 for a non-resident card, plus $5 for each additional household member. And if you did an audio download club, it's about $15 a month. So this is kind of you can actually go on our website and do this calculator. In a month's time, if you were to take out 4 books, a couple of movies, a couple of audiobooks, maybe use one of our museum passes and maybe get an interlibrary loan, the value of all those services is about $322 for that month. Here is our budget, which is also on page 32 in your book. This is the budget the trustees proposed, with the bottom line of $86,855, with $6,855 of this would be coming out of our gift fund, so $80,000 would be raised in taxes, and that is what the amendment is for. Does anybody have any questions?
Questions or comments on the proposal of amendment? Chair would recognize Mr. Unruh.
Just a quick question to the trustees or Eugene. When Brana was speaking, she mentioned that the trustees' goal was to put less of a burden on the taxpayers. Can you speak to what your budget was last year, and if this amendment passes at a $80,000 note to the town, what the difference is to our taxpayers in dollars?
Mrs. Carr, you recognized for the question.
Okay, if you look at the budget in your book on page 32, you can see that last year we were funded totally by the town for $86,468. So this year we pretty much level funded in spite of insurance increases, minimum wage increase. We kept the budget pretty much the same. We do need to get computers replaced. Some of them are 6 or 8 years old and do a lot of work in the library. So that's something that'll probably end up coming from the gift fund. So from last year to this year, we really have basically level funded. It's maybe a $400 difference. This year is up about $400. So it's very close.
Further discussion on the proposal of amendment, Mr. Parker, and then the other Mr. Parker. But come to the microphone so there's no delay. Mr. Chris Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'm just curious if at the originally proposed $76,000, are we still able to offer everything that is offered there currently? You mentioned Brooks Memorial, and that you have to pay the membership for that, you have to pay for the audiobooks and all of those things. We're still going to be able to offer those at our library for the same proposed budget at $76,000, correct?
Maybe not. There are fees for, like Listen Up Vermont. The library does pay for that, but then it is available to all patrons. So with a reduced budget, there will have to be cuts. We may be cutting personnel again. We've gone from having 2 full-time librarians a couple years ago to now just 1. And very partial assistant. Last year I was able to get back up to 20 hours for an assistant. So these are the areas that may need to be looked at and reduced to keep us in line.
Further discussion on the proposal of amendment. Mr. Parker will ask you to speak.
Hi, I'm Mark Parker. I've been coming to a town meeting. I've been in this town for 40 years. And 39 of those years I've been here. And I always love to ask the question nobody wants to, because that's just the way I am. Vernon Free Library. Why does it say free if we're paying $76,000 or $80,000? I mean, apples, oranges, I like why does it say free, but we always have to come up with money every year?
Mrs. Carr, you're interrogated.
Well, there's no charge to become a member of the library. There are no charges for late fees. This is all our mission statement. Library services is open and free for everyone. Okay. Nothing is free. We don't get fire department for free, the rec department for free.
But they don't say free.
Make sure that you use the microphone when you talk.
Libraries are in a different term, because there are libraries, like Brooks charges for members.
Yeah.
There's libraries that charge for overdues. That's never been in the mission statement for Vernon Free Library.
Okay,
So
thank you.
that's where that word works.
Further discussion on the proposal of amendment. We'll walk up to the microphone, please. Let's reduce the wait time here. And both of you will be recognized for a first time before we recognize anybody for a second.
Andrew Gant, I want to start off by saying I love our library. You guys do a great job. However, we just voted to up our taxes to get more police coverage. When we appropriate money to cover our safety, it has to be cut other places, and I really don't see where we can raise any more tonight. So I encourage you, please vote no. Thank you.
Heather Frost. There was a small $400 increase over the budget, but also I heard earlier that because of FICA increase and leap year, another budget had increased because of that.
Further discussion on the proposal of amendment? Seeing nobody else with their hand up, Mr. Unruh, you'll be recognized a second time.
Just a follow-up to what Chris Parker mentioned. You said that we may not be able to offer audiobooks because of a $5,000–6,000 difference in budget. When your budget was reduced to, correct me if I'm wrong, $70,000 2 years ago, were you still able to offer audiobooks?
Mrs. Carr?
We did not cut any of those programs at that point. However, we cut a tremendous amount of staffing. We cut a full-time librarian. We cut many hours of the assistant. So that's where the cuts came in that year.
Further questions? Please go to the microphone, ma'am. We'll recognize you for a first time.
Paula Ewan, was wondering, how many hours a week are you actually open?
26 hours.
26 hours. And for 26 hours, it costs $86,000 and 2 full-time librarians?
No, there is not 2 full-time librarians.
You said at one time there was. Is
There
that
was,
correct?
and our budget was about $115,000 then.
Yeah.
So the library over the last few years has cut significantly.
But I don't understand, where does the cost with the hours that it's open? When, you know, everything you can get online now is pretty much free. And I agree with Chris Parker on the free part, maybe that should be changed, because we are paying for it with taxes. But I just can't seem to justify 26 hours with $86,000.
That's, we're open 5 days a week. It's not just staffing, it's a library, so we do buy books and other materials to be available for the public, so all of those things are in our budget. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
Yes, you are.
We never work alone. Whether I have an assistant with me or a volunteer, we're never alone in the library, because at 5 o'clock there's nobody else in the building, so I don't want to be in there alone in the dark outside. So the State Department of Libraries wants 2 people in the libraries for safety and all. So.
Thank you.
Further discussion, Mr. Wielden will recognize you for a first time on this question.
Gene, a question in the book, when it shows the actuals, and down at the bottom, it says for 18-19, for totals, it says $36,829.
Well, that...
And 80 cents. Hold on. But then when you go over to the FY 19-20, it's $86,835 or $855. That's an huge gap.
When the budget was submitted for printing, that was during budget process with the select board. So the actuals were like in December. And that's for the budget year we're in right now, right? So it wasn't the whole year. That's part of the year we're in now, and in fact, it was the part only up until December. So, probably should not have put that in there.
I'm sorry.
Further discussion on the proposal of amendment? You're recognized, ma'am.
Kristen Dietrich, Mr. Moderator. I just wanted to bring up a couple of other services that get offered to the town.
Is that on or off? You may need to help her with that, Ian.
Here we go.
Okay.
That there's also high-speed internet access in the library, and there is Wi-Fi free Wi-Fi available throughout the town offices, which is something that comes out of the library's budget.
Further discussion on the proposal of amendment? If no one else wishes to speak for a first time, Mr. Parker will recognize you for a second time.
I'm just curious, given that we are a free library, how does that affect non-residents that want to come from Brattleboro or Guilford to try and save their money to come to this town and get it for free? Are we charging them?
Yes, we do charge non-residents. I don't know, do the residents in Brattleboro pay for the library? I quoted non-resident fees. I'm not, no, so residents of Brattleboro do not pay to use their library.
And what do we charge non-residents?
$25.
Further discussion on the proposal of amendment by Mrs. Lockever? Seeing none, the proposal is to amend the article to read as follows. Shall the voters appropriate a total library fund expenditure of $86,855 for administration of the Vernon Free Library, of which $80,000 shall be raised by taxes and $6,855 shall be appropriated from the Vernon Free Library Gift Fund. All those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The amendment has been approved. Further discussion on the article as amended. Mr. Unruh.
We've already passed this, so it doesn't really matter, but we are now paying more per hour for a library than we do for law enforcement.
Further discussion on the amended article? Seeing none, again, the article as amended reads, shall the voters appropriate a total library fund expenditure of $86,855 for administration of the Vernon Free Library, for which $80,000 shall be raised by taxes and $6,855 shall be appropriated from the Vernon Free Library Gift Fund. All those in favor of Article 5 as amended, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Article 5 as amended has been passed. We move to Article number 6, to elect a library trustee to fill the unexpired term of 1 year through town meeting in March of 2020.
Mr. Moderator, Kristen Dietrich. I'd like to nominate Joanne Levely to fill the unexpired term of 1 year through town meeting of March of 2020.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded that Joanne Levely be nominated to fill the unexpired term of 1 year through town meeting of March of 2020. Any further nominations? Seeing none, all those in favor of Joanne Levely for an unexpired term of 1 year, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. And Joanne Levely has been elected to fill an unexpired term of 1 year. Article 7, to elect a library trustee to fill the unexpired term of 3 years through town meeting of March 2022. Ms. Levely.
I would like to nominate Kristen Dietrich to fill the term of 3 years through the town meeting of March 2022. Yeah.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded that Kristen Dietrich fill the unexpired term of 1 year through town meeting of March of 2022, actually up 3 years, I see that, through March of 2022. Any further nominations? Seeing none, all those in favor of Joanne Levely, please say aye. Oh, Kristen Dietrich. All those in favor of Kristen Dietrich, please say aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Kristen Dietrich has been nominated to fill that unexpired term of 3 years. We move to Article number 8, to elect a library trustee to fill the term of 3 years through town meeting of March 2022. Mrs. Pereira.
Mr. Moderator, I nominate Amy Emery to fill the term of 3 years to the town meeting of March 2022.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded that Amy Emery be elected to fill the term of 3 years through town meeting of March 2022. Seeing no other nominations, all those in favor of Amy Emery, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Amy Emery has been elected. Article number 9, to elect the Marsh Fund Committee. Chair would recognize Mr. Dunkley. Turn the microphone on.
Mr. Moderator.
That's better. Go ahead.
I move that we appoint James Brown and Sandra Harris to the Marsh Fund Committee.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that we appoint James Brown and Sandra Harris to the Marsh Fund Committee. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. James Brown and Sandra Harris appointed to the Marsh Fund Committee. Article 10, to elect a Memorial Day Committee. Is there a motion? Mr. Parker.
I move that we appoint Peter and Angela Miller to the Memorial Day Committee.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We appoint Peter and Angela Miller to the Memorial Day Committee. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 10 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 10. Article number 11. Shall the voters appropriate $200,899 for the funding of items approved in the capital plan, of which $193,184 would be raised by taxes? Mr. Dunkley.
Mr. Moderator, before I make the motion, I'd like to thank the Capital Plan Committee on behalf of the Select Board.
You should actually make the motion first, and then in the follow-up comments, thank the Capital Plan Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I move that the voters appropriate $200,899 for the funding of items approved in the capital plan, of which $193,184 to be raised by taxes.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded, the voters appropriate $200,899 for the funding of items approved in the capital plan, of which $193,184 will be raised by taxes. Mr. Dunkley, do you wish to speak to your motion?
Yes, Mr. Moderator.
Please do.
I'd like to thank the Capital Plan Committee on behalf of the Select Board for all their hard work. Linda Stereopinski, Tom Rappaport, Joyce Goodnow, and Rita Mudd. And either Tom or Linda can speak on the capital plan.
I do not see Ms. Stereopinski here. However, the chair will recognize Mr. Rappaport for further discussion on the motion.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Thank you, Mr. Dunkley. There were only 2 items added to the capital plan this year. The fire station roof was last replaced in 1996. And beginning with the upcoming fiscal year, the town should appropriate funds for the eventual replacement of the roof at a projected cost of $38,000, and that amount would be spread over 3 years. So an appropriation of approximately $12,670 for the next 3 years. Also, the fire department needs to purchase a LifePak 12 defibrillator monitor. That's a piece of equipment used by the EMTs. The projected cost of the LifePak is $30,000, and that amount would be spread over 2 years, beginning with the upcoming fiscal year. That's it.
Thank you. Further discussion on Article number 11? Anyone who would wish to speak, please rise and make your way toward the magic microphone in the center of the room. Seeing none, the motion as read is that the voters appropriate $200,899 for the funding of items approved in the capital plan, of which $193,184 will be raised by taxes. All those in favor of Article 11 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Article 11 has been approved as presented. Article 12, shall the voters appropriate $25,600 to be raised by taxes to reimburse the Emergency Capital Reserve Fund for expenses related to light replacement at the Vernon Recreation Center. Mr. Unruh.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters appropriate $25,600 to be raised by taxes to reimburse the Emergency Capital Reserve Fund for expenses related to the light repair at the Vernon Recreation Center.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate $25,600 to be raised by taxes to reimburse the Emergency Capital Reserve Fund for expenses related to light replacement at the Vernon Recreation Area. Discussion on the motion. Do you wish to speak to your motion at all? Well, there you go. Something to be said for brevity. All those in favor of Article 12 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article number 12. Article 13, shall the voters appropriate $100,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town Road Upgrading Fund. Mr. Parker.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters appropriate $100,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town Road Upgrading Fund.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded, the voters appropriate $100,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town Road Upgrading Fund. Do you wish to speak to your motion, Mr. Parker?
No, sir.
Any discussion on Article number 13? Mr. Brooks and anybody else who wishes to speak, make your way up to the microphone. Don't be shy, don't be bashful.
Mike Brooks. On page 12 of the Town Road Upgrade Fund, there's a line item for Sac Road maintenance. Not so worried about the amount of $373, but I'm just curious as to why that's segregated out from the regular maintenance of the roads.
Well, I would take it that either the maker of the motion or the road commissioner would be queried, and if there's a wireless, you can get that right down to David, who, by the way, was up at 1 o'clock this morning to plow your roads. Mr. Walker.
There's money set aside in there, Mike, for Sac Road when we were doing all the engineering stuff. That's completely separate.
Okay, how much is left in that account or in that amount? I think we appropriated, what, $50,000 two or 3 years ago?
Cindy, do you have that?
Mrs. Turnley is interrogated.
Okay, 1 second.
So just take a second, as you can probably tell.
Sorry for asking a question that's keeping people up at night. Tim,
Yes.
while she's looking that up, can I ask David another question?
Well, I believe you can if he still has a microphone in his direction. I'll give you a follow-up. Go ahead.
I just want to know if there is plans to continue, or I should say, start upgrading Sac Road.
Mr. Walker.
We are right back to square one where nobody has signed off again.
Okay, so if we have a certain amount that we could transfer, we may want to do that at some point in time. I'm not going to amend that tonight, but
Okay.
it sounds like we're not going anywhere with that.
Mr. Unruh?
Come see us at a select board meeting. It's a really good time to do all this.
Okay, all right.
So I think we've got the question answered. Mr. Parker?
Mark Parker. David.
Mr. Walker?
David and crew, I just want to say that as a Vernon resident, I have never felt safer on my roads than when I drive, because I used to drive back and forth to Connecticut, and those people down there could take lessons from you guys, because I've never had a problem in Vernon. You guys do a fantastic job, and you're very unappreciated sometimes, but I just want you to know you guys do a fantastic job.
Thank you.
And we're still...
Tim, I have the answer now.
Okay, Cindy, go ahead.
Cindy Turley, Town Treasurer. There is $13,933.32 left.
All right. I guess that answers your question, Mr. Brooks. All right, any further discussion on Article 13? Seeing none, the motion is that the voters appropriate $100,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town Road Upgrading Fund. All those in favor of Article 13 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 13. Article 14. Shall the voters appropriate $40,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town Culvert Fund? Is there a motion? Ms. Carr.
I move the voters appropriate $40,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the town culvert fund.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. The voters appropriate $40,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town Culvert Fund. Discussion on the motion. And remember, we are still part of the meeting, so thank you. Any further discussion on Article 14? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 14 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have passed Article 14. By the way, new hearing aids this year. I can hear you. I could just read your lips last year. Article 15, shall voters appropriate the sum of $2,500 to be raised by taxes to fund the Town Parking Lots Maintenance Fund. Is there a motion? Ms. Carr.
I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $2,500 to be raised by taxes to fund the town parking lots maintenance fund.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. The voters appropriate the sum of $2,500 to be raised by taxes to fund the town parking lots maintenance fund. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 15 as well. Oh, in fact, there you are. Hop right up there.
Nancy Barrington, and I'm just looking at that fund, and it has $67,567 in it already. Is there a specific parking lot that needs to be upgraded that we're using this $2,500 on?
The road commissioner is interrogated. Mr. Walker?
We went through and we had them all redone a couple of years ago. We've been crack sealing and covering them over, but we're also getting ready so when we have to do more, we won't be coming in for a great big lot amount. Just trying to build up a fund gradually.
Further discussion on Article number 15. Anything further? If not, we'll move for a vote. The motion is that the voters appropriate the sum of $2,500 to be raised by taxes to fund the town parking lots maintenance fund. All those in favor of the article, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 15. Let's go for Article 16. Shall the voters appropriate $25,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Professional Services Fund? Mr. Unruh.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters appropriate $25,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Professional Services Fund.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded, the voters appropriate $25,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the Professional Services Fund. Discussion on the motion. And seeing none. All those in favor of Article number 16 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The chair is in doubt. All those in favor of Article 16 as read, please stand. And V.S.A. members, could you please count? Please be seated. All those opposed to Article 16 as read, please stand. All those opposed to the article as read, please stand. In reality, the chair is no longer in doubt. I'm not blind. I may not be able to hear, but I'm not blind. Chair will declare the article passed. We move to Article 17. Shall the voters appropriate $15,162 for the Windham Solid Waste District assessment to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Solid Waste Fund? Mr. Unruh.
Mr. Moderator, I move that voters appropriate $15,162 for the Windham Solid Waste District assessment to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Solid Waste Fund.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded, the voters appropriate $15,162 for the Windham Solid Waste District assessment to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Solid Waste Fund. Do you wish to speak to your motion, Mr. Unruh?
Not even a little.
Any comments or questions on Article number 17? And if I see none, I'm going to move for a vote. All those in favor of Article 17 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. An article has been passed. We move to Article number 18. Shall the voters appropriate $63,000 for municipal refuse, townwide recycling, and compost disposal to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Solid Waste Fund? Mr. Unruh.
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters appropriate $63,000 for the municipal refuse, townwide recycling, and compost disposal to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Solid Waste Fund.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate $63,000 for the municipal refuse, townwide recycling, and compost disposal to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Solid Waste Fund. Do you wish to speak to your motion?
More than anything.
Then, by all means, please do.
So just for clarification, this fund basically takes care of the town office garbage each week, townwide recycling pickup, and disposal of the compost pickup and all that kind of thing. That's what this money is for.
Any further discussion on Article 18? Seeing none. All those in favor of Article 18 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 18. Article 19. Shall the voters appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Elderly Assistance Fund? Mr. Dunkley.
Mr. Moderator, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Elderly Assistance Fund?
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, the voters appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Elderly Assistance Fund. Do you wish to speak to your motion? No. Any discussion on Article 19? Over in the corner, Ms. Vergobi. That's a record for getting to a microphone in our town meeting history.
We're all tired, we know that. Where's Cindy? I'd like to make eye contact. Can you look up the figures? Because this isn't a budget thing and it's a fund thing, can we look at the history of what has been pulled out of this fund over the last maybe 2 years? I mean, last year we saw, I think it was like 13,000, but.
The treasurer is interrogated.
So while she's looking that up, the point of this inquiry is that I love this fund and I want to see it continue. It's still at a healthy balance, but I don't want to see it drain if we're not funding it. If we're only funding, last year I think it was 10,000. Oh, sorry, that run got me. And if we're pulling out 13,000, I don't want to deplete the fund. I think that'll be a long time before that happens. But I'd like to see what the trend numbers are so that we're funding it appropriately. I don't want to drain it too far and then have to increase the amount.
Cindy Turnley, Town Treasurer. So far this fiscal year, we've spent $6,790.54, and last fiscal year we spent $13,662.36.
We don't know about the year before. I don't want to make people wait.
I can do that.
It doesn't, for me, I'm not looking for an amendment or anything. I'm just looking for information. So if
Okay.
people don't mind waiting, we can come back to it.
While we're waiting on her, can I ask a question just about the fund?
That would be fine. You'll recognize Ms. Burrington.
Nancy Burrington. I would like to know how this fund, I think it's a wonderful thing, and I think we should keep it. But I would like to know how it's determined who benefits from this fund, and just to make sure that the people that really need it are getting benefited.
Okay, Mrs. Turnley is going to answer that question, then answer the previous question, then we'll interrogate the head of the Elderly Assistance Fund.
Okay, the prior year was $10,978.59.
All right. So, Ms. Sherlin, you're interrogated about the fund itself. I'm sure you heard the question.
Any of the services we provide, the first thing is you have to be a Vernon resident for at least a year and 65 years of age, and saying that your income is limited or you'll deplete your savings or that in order to receive help. And then you have to request it. The person receiving the assistance needs to request the assistance. We've had some issues before where well-meaning family members have said, my mom, my dad, whatever, need some help, and then you go to talk with them, and mom and dad or grandma have said, I don't need that, I don't want that, and they struggle. So that person has to request it, and we do request that we have forms for them to fill out, and so we request that they specifically state what they need in writing. Does that answer your question?
Further questions on Article number 19, the Elderly Assistance Fund? Seeing none, the motion reads that the voters appropriate the sum of $10,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Elderly Assistance Fund. All those in favor of Article 19 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 19. Article 20. Shall the voters appropriate the sum of $1,100 to be raised by taxes to fund the Vernon Historians for the purpose of record preservation, retention, and promotion of history, educational initiatives, and insurance coverage? Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator.
Mrs. Harris.
I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $1,100 to be raised by taxes to fund the Vernon Historians for the purpose of records preservation, retention, and promotion of history, educational initiatives, and insurance coverage.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, the voters appropriate the sum of $1,100 to be raised by taxes to fund the Vernon Historians for the purpose of records preservation, retention, and promotion of history, educational initiatives, and insurance coverage. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 20 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have passed Article 20. Article 21, shall the voters appropriate $2,000 to be raised by taxes to fund a public fireworks display? Mr. Dunkley. Is that microphone on? Now it is.
It is now.
Okay.
Shall the voters appropriate $2,000 to be raised by taxes to fund a public fireworks display?
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate $2,000 to be raised by taxes to fund a public fireworks display. Discussion on the motion. Back of the room, come on up and get to the microphone. I believe that's Mrs. Gant.
Hannah Gant. I was told I was not going to have to speak on this, but because of how our town has decided to vote, I'm going to request that we cut it to a zero balance, and I will do it solely by fundraising with the people that have decided to help. And in that, I plead the town to be willing to help from your pockets when the letters are put out and the info is put out. Thanks.
So, if I hear you correctly, rather than making an amendment, you would request that the body vote down the article, which would amount to the same thing?
Yep.
Second. Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 21 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The nays appear to have it. The nays have it. Article 21 has been defeated. Article 22, shall the voters appropriate the sum of $6,025 to be raised by taxes to support the following in the designated amounts: Senior Solutions, $800, Healthcare and Rehabilitation Services, $1,850, the current $125, and Visiting Nurses and Hospice of Vermont and New Hampshire, $3,250. Is there a motion on the floor?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $6,025 to be raised by taxes to support the following: Senior Solutions for $800, Healthcare and Rehabilitation Services for $1,850, the current for $125, Visiting Nurse and Hospice of Vermont and New Hampshire for $3,250.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate the sum of $6,025 to be raised by taxes to support the following: Senior Solutions for $800, HCRS for $1,850, the current for $125, Visiting Nurse and Hospice of Vermont, New Hampshire for $3,250, and that when the vote be taken, it be taken by paper ballot. Discussion on the motion. Did you make? Okay, skip that paper ballot part then. I'll read it again. Thank you, Mr. Unruh. I will repeat the motion as it was read. You see, my hearing isn't perfect. Move that the voters appropriate a sum of $6,025 to be raised by taxes to support the following: Senior Solutions for $800, HCRS for $1,850, the current for $125, Visiting Nurses and Hospice of Vermont, New Hampshire for $3,250. Do I have it correct now? Okay, thank you. Discussion on the motion, Mr. Gant, then Mr. Unruh.
Andrew Gant, once again, I know I said it last year, and as my wife just said, with the decisions that we've made in our voting this year, we have to make cuts somewhere. These are all great things to give to. I personally don't feel it's right to force people to donate out of their taxes, so I plead with you, we need to cut someplace. Vote it down. Thank you.
Mr. Unruh.
Culvert paper ballot.
Will 7 people sustain him? We need 7 people to stand on this. Okay. Admission that your moderator / town clerk is not perfect. I didn't prepare a paper ballot for this. So here's what you're going to do. You can use the pink card and right on the back of it what you would like to vote in favor of. Take them one by one. Senior Solutions, Healthcare and Rehabilitation Services, the current and Visiting Nurse and Hospice of Vermont and New Hampshire. So,
hi, I'm Terry with the Visiting Nurses. I know I need to ask permission to speak. I don't know if it's too late to do that.
Have we already called the question yet? I don't think we have. But however, you are a non-resident, so unless the body objects, you'll be allowed to speak.
Objection.
All those in favor of allowing the gentleman to speak, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
A 2/3 clearly having been reached, please continue.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here. It's been a long night, but please bear with me. So this is the first time we've come to meeting. It's also the first time we're requesting again since 2 years ago where this was voted down the first time. At that point, the V.A. was asking for $6,500, and that had been level funded for a number of years. So understanding that there's obviously a burden on the town with taxes, when we came back this year and petitioned, we acknowledged we needed to lower our amount. So this year we've cut it right in half, and we're asking for $3,250. If I'll go briefly, I just want to explain what we do, read our report. So home healthcare hospice, that's the Visiting Nurses. We were incorporated right here in Brattleboro next door in 1907. We've been serving Vernon ever since. Last year, we made 983 visits throughout the year to 28 unique individuals. So in home health care, and that could be something like a knee replacement, wound care after surgery, 208 visits to 19 residents. Long-term care, and that's defined by someone who's on service with us for more than 6 months. We made 47 visits to 2 residents. Hospice, end-of-life care, we had 6 residents peacefully die at home, and that was 725 visits taking care of those people. And then skilled pediatric care is, say, if there's a hard birth and there's an issue after birth with either the mother or child, we had 1 resident and 3 visits to help them out. I also want to say we have a monthly clinic right next door that the elders attend on birthday day, and that's blood pressures and foot care. Again, it's oh, and one more thing. Our charity care to Vernon alone equaled about $22,000. So this $3,200 is just trying to make sure that we can continue to offer the capacity to serve throughout the state. Vermont-wide, a little over $5 million in charity care comes from us every year. $650,000 comes from towns. That's really vital to making sure that we can stay active. I think that's it. I'll take questions if there are any.
Thank you. Any further comments on the article?
Thank you.
Point of order, Mr. Moderator.
Mr. Slason?
Is it the moderator's intention now that the voters write down each of the 4 entities and mark a yes or a no, so that you can make the determination by each organization at the end of the vote, as opposed to cumulative votes, which has been done at some time in the past? So what I'm asking for is just to make sure that we arrive at a determination for each entity. Is that
Correct. That is my intent. The moderator's intent is that you mark down each of these organizations and say yes or no whether you're willing to support them at the levels indicated in the warning question. The question is still open for debate. No one has called the question yet. And Mr. Unruh.
Call the question.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. We cease debate. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion passes. We have ceased debate. Again, take your voter card and indicate on it which of these organizations you wish to support, and then go to the ballot box. We are back in order while we await the results on Article 22. We're going to move to Article 23. Take your seats. We'll reopen the meeting. We'll move to Article number 23. Shall the voters appropriate the sum of $15,000 to be raised by taxes for the operation of the Emergency Management Office? Mr. Unruh.
I move that the voters appropriate the sum of $15,000 to be raised by taxes for the operation of the Emergency Management Office.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded that the voters appropriate the sum of $15,000 to be raised by taxes for the operation of the Emergency Management Office. Discussion on the motion? And seeing none, all those in favor of Article 23 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You have passed Article 23. Article 24, shall the voters of the Town of Vernon authorize the Select Board spend $110,000 from the Vernon Farmland Protection Fund to pay a portion of the cost that will permanently conserve 146 acres on Route 142 owned by Whitney Elms, LLC. Is there a motion on the floor? Ms. Carr. Use the microphone, please, Jean.
Is that on?
Yep.
Yep. Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters of the Town of Vernon authorize the Select Board to spend $110,000 from the Vernon Farmland Protection Fund to pay a portion of the costs that will permanently conserve 146 acres on Route 142 owned by Whitney Elms, LLC.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded. The voters of the Town of Vernon authorize the Select Board to spend $110,000 from the Vernon Farmland Protection Fund to pay a portion of the cost that will permanently conserve 146 acres on Route 142, owned by Whitney Elms, LLC. Discussion on the motion, and I presume that we're going to defer to Mr. Miller from the Farmland Preservation Committee. Mr. Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. I'd like to give a quick presentation on what the article contains, what it consists of. When you came in, we do have a complete handout over at the table. It's about 18 pages. We decided not to present all of that tonight. So we have about 4 or 5 slides we'd like to show. Vernon has been historically very supportive of the Farmland Protection Committee and the process. These are the parcels that have been previously preserved. The Newton Farm, David Newton's farm, the 76 acres, the Tyler Farm from the Unitas family. In 1999, 100 acres on Newton Road, as soon as you go over the railroad tracks on the right there for the Dunkleys. 73 acres a couple years ago on Pond Road, again for the Dunkley farm. and also 25 acres on Pond Road, just before the Rec Department, Gene Carr's parcel there. The proposal that we have this evening, as was read in the article, the owners are Whitney Elms LLC. This is the Vermont farm, again, Dunkley property down near the town line. This would be the largest parcel that we've set aside as a town, assuming that we approve the article, for 146 acres. The way it would be funded, the Vermont Land Trust is coordinating all these efforts, the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board from the state of Vermont, and then from the federal government, the U.S. Natural Resources Conservation Services. Those have already been approved, and then the Town of Vernon is the article that we're requesting this evening. To highlight the properties, there's actually two parcels. If you look at the very bottom middle, you will see the Dunkley Farm. So it's the parcels that are outlined in the yellow. So it's directly across the road from the Dunkley Farm there, Sam Kendall's farm. You have the property just directly across, a little bit to the right, and across the tracks, both of those parcels there as well. The ones with the, I guess those are arrowheads, that's the, an archaeological preservation highlighted there. To the top of the screen, that would be over by Kerry Tyler's property down the hill, also from the Skip estate. That was part of it as well. So if you combine all those parcels together, it's a total of 146 acres. The restrictions on this property, and this is where sometimes as citizens we get stumble a little bit as to what's actually involved here. So what is being purchased is the development rights. So the conservation easement will be held by the Vermont Land Trust and the other organizations, not by the Town of Vernon. If the Dunkleys decide to sell to a non-qualified party, that means not to a farmer, basically, the Vermont Land Trust will have an option to purchase the farmland at conserved value. So they have like a right of first refusal there. The easement includes rights to construct limited farmhouse and farm-related structures subject to approval by easement holders within a specified area. Those have pretty much already been agreed to with the Vermont Land Trust, and the Vermont Land Trust obviously is very conservative on what they allow to be built upon that, because obviously they don't want anything built upon that. And again, we're selling the development rights. This does not mean that the town has right to use the property. So that's where the confusion sometimes comes in. We've had citizens that have felt, since we bought the development rights, now we can do whatever we want on the property. No, Dunkley still maintain control of the property. So how do we come up with the funding for this $110,000? We had a recent appraisal, and hopefully this won't get too complicated. The fair market value of this recent appraisal is $950,000. The value of the property, if a conservation easement is in place, is $320,000. The difference, obviously, is $630,000, and that is the value of the development rights that are actually being sold under this conservation easement. And so the funding comes from, again, the federal level and the state for $480,000 to fund those development rights. The request of the town of the Vernon Farmland Protection Fund is for $110,000. That's 17% of the rights value. Originally, that 110 represented 20% of the rights value, and historically that has been the level that the town has funded. But due to the adjustment in the appraisal price, they did not ask for more from the town, but even though the fair market value per the appraisal actually increased. Currently, the fund, I checked with Cindy, we have right at $300,000 in the fund today. So there'd be roughly $190,000 left in the Farmland Protection Fund for any future projects that may come before the town. So, Mr. Moderator, that is my presentation.
Thank you. The chair would recognize Mr. Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Bob Spencer, I'm chair of the Vernon Planning and Economic Development Commission. At our January meeting, we reviewed this proposal and voted unanimously to support this article. I should point out that Jeff Dunkley, being on the Planning Commission, abstained from that vote, but it was unanimous. So we're encouraging the town to approve this. In the presentation that was handed out, and that Art didn't give you the full, there is a recognition that this is very consistent with the town plan, and which was recently just fully updated, and has been consistent with previous town plans. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Chair would recognize Mr. Gant.
Just for clarification, in the past, we've already conserved 173 acres for the Dunkley Farm itself. If we appropriate the 146, that would mean that 76% of the farmland that we would have conserved has been to one farm in the area. I would assume that we would have other farms in the area that could possibly benefit from this conversation. However, with that being said, I would like to go to a division of the House and a paper ballot on this issue.
A division of the House and a paper ballot?
No. Paper ballot for this issue.
Paper
please.
ballot for this issue. If 7 people stand, you'll get your paper ballot. I see, and I really can't see right now, 3, 4, 5, 6, and that's it. 7? Okay, you get your paper ballot on this one. All right, further discussion on the motion? Ms. Bergovi.
Thank you. Does this change the assessed value or what we collect on taxes from this farmland? Does this designation change that?
Mr. Miller is queried.
This does not affect taxes because it's already currently enrolled in the current use program.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Dietrich?
Oh, I was just going to speak to the question of the taxes, but Art's already spoken to it, but it's definitely, as assessed at current use, it's definitely significantly less. It's about $47,000 is the assessed value under the current use program. So there won't be any decrease to the town in terms of revenue.
Thank you. Mr. Hicks.
Unson Hicks. I'm just clarifying from my own point of view, what we're basically buying is 17% of the rights values, so that should the conservation easement fall apart, in other words, a non-eligible person attempts to buy it, and so the conservation, I can't remember what the name, land trust buys it at $320,000. Our 17% comes out to $54,000. So in the unlikely event that it falls apart, we have about a $55,000 loss to the town. I'm not saying good or bad, I'm just saying we need to be aware of that. Unless I'm doing the math wrong.
Thank you. Any further discussion on the article? Seeing none, Mrs. O'Donnell.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. You know, I just wanted to give a little bit of history here. Our forefathers valued farmland. They thought it was very important to protect it, and that's where this fund came from. There's been a lot of money put into the fund, mostly by Vermont Yankee, but because the people that came before us wanted to see Vernon stay Vernon, not to have its farms developed and have huge housing all over the place. It's really important that we look into our future and decide what we want to be as a town, because the more we save our farms, the better chances we have of staying an agricultural community. If we don't step up to the plate and help save our farms, nobody else is going to do it.
Further discussion on the proposal? Actually, both of you have spoken once already, and I will recognize Mr. Gant and then you, Ms. Dietrich.
Just to the statement that this will not affect our taxes, I understand that this article will not, but isn't it true that the very next article is to help replenish the money, and that will affect our taxes? Therefore, if this was voted down, the next article would be null and void.
Mr. Miller.
Okay, so the Farmland Protection Fund has already been funded. So this article that is on the floor has nothing to do with raising money to replenish the fund. The next article is a question to the town if they want to add to the fund, but that's a separate article from this one here.
But if this would be voted down, there would be no need to put any more money back in, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
I think
thank
if this gets voted down, then I think we have a serious question as a town, because as you know, for like 40 years, 35 years, we've been funding this fund, and why do we have the fund? That would be the question to ask if this gets voted down, because this is obviously is it's great farmland, and if we don't protect this, then why have the fund?
Yeah, Kristen Dietrich, Mr. Moderator, I just wanted to encourage everyone to support this motion. I mean, the Dunkleys have been in the farming in this town for generations. They're an important historic part, an important economic part of the town. We talk about our values for the town and preserving its rural character. Preserving this open space is good for the environment. You're having having plants and cropland instead of having any kind of development coming out of this, like building on this site. You're protecting, this farmland is a big buffer along the Connecticut River, which is an important part of our community and our environment. So I think this conservation project is really important on a number of different levels, and I'd really ask people to support this. We put this fund together because this is one of our town values, and then to not use the money. Somebody brought up, I think, that the Dunkleys have a certain percentage of the town farmland. They also are probably the biggest landowner in town. I'm not exactly sure, but also anyone who has farmland in town can come to the town and request this funding. There's 2 other people that have been funded before, so it's not like the Dunkleys are the only one that benefited from this or can benefit in the future. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you, Ms. Freeman.
Jessica Freeman. It is true, correct, that the money that's in this fund can only be spent on farmland protection? Okay, so it's
That's what we
there.
set it up for. I mean, I don't know that if we as a town decide to reappropriate it, but it has been appropriated for farmland protection, yes.
Thanks.
Chair would recognize Ms. Allen.
Hi, thank you very much. I just have a few questions. Of the 146 acres, how many are in the floodplain?
Jeff, can you speak to that better than me?
Mr. Dunkley is recognized if he so chooses, and I need you to use the microphone, Jeff.
Sorry.
To be honest, I haven't looked at a floodplain map in quite some time. The river level is probably about 35 feet below the bank of the lowest lying field. But FEMA, after Hurricane Irene, they went and remapped all the flood zones, and I think they were quite liberal in their interpretations.
Okay, thank you. So if, I'm just going to make the jump. So if FEMA was liberal in their interpretations, a lot of this land may not be able to be developed because it is in the floodplain. So it's already essentially conserved by FEMA, is my assumption. That's the first question. And the second question, 146. Okay, so in the event that the Dunkley farm sells this land, it's only conserved while the Dunkleys own the land, but they could essentially sell 146 acres to one person who's going to build one house and have $1 million estate. Could that happen?
I'm not sure exactly what the arrangement is with the Vermont Land Trust. I do know that the 146 acres, if it's going to, it needs to be sold, is my understanding, to someone who's going to be actively using it as in agriculture.
So we could sell it to one ranch and build one mega ranch with 146 acres for $1 million. One chef decides he no longer wants to farm it, and that's still considered agricultural.
I assume that would be the case.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Tim, may I speak?
I will allow you to speak a second time, but there are people who haven't spoken a first time yet, and they need to be allowed. Mr. Parker, you
Mark Parker
recognize.
again. For the last 23, well, when I was working for the former company, for 23 years, I traveled back and forth to Connecticut, and I cannot tell you how many farms I have seen converted into housing developments. And it breaks my heart when I saw some of the most pristine locations in Connecticut on the hill, and they were farmed for years. And then a year later, go down that road and see 20, 30, 40 houses. That is farmland where Connecticut was very rich in the farming, whether it was tobacco or cattle or whatever. Those farms, that land will never be farmland again. And if there's a way to protect Vernon with our farmland, to protect for future generations, the Dunkleys, the Millers, Blodgetts, I can't remember how many farms there used to be in Vernon. These are the 3 biggest farms that are still here. And we owe it to ourselves and to their future generations to keep these farms farms. And once they're gone, you'll never get them back again. And I just would just wish we would all just vote for this and be done with it and just keep our farmland farmland.
Further discussion on the article, Ms. Gant.
My name's Hannah Gant. I grew up on the back half of some of Doug Lee's property my entire life. I used to take long, great walks with my dad down to the river, get to stand in all 3 states at once, so I can testify that there is a portion of it that is eroding away. It's been eroding away for 33 years. So we're literally going to be dumping money into a sinking hole, literally.
Chair would recognize you, ma'am.
Sandra Rulewich. I just want to say that I agree with Mr. Parker on the importance of preserving farmland. And once a piece of land is developed, it's not ever going back to farmland, or not for a very, very long time, and with a lot of trouble. I think this device of the protection organizations who buy the development rights allow the farmers to keep farming, because the economics of farming are not very supportive these days, and that's why we've lost so many farms and so much farmland. So this allows the farmland to keep being used for farms, and farmers can keep doing what they do and not go under. I just encourage everybody to think very carefully about supporting this.
Thank you. Further discussion on the article, Mrs. Harris, and then Mr. Teets. Come up to the microphone, Brian. Oh, you get, okay, Sandy, you're first, then you, Brian.
On the floodplain, I believe if you build in a floodplain, your limitation is you're going to have flood insurance. I strongly recommend that we pass this. Our kids and our grandkids have a right to see farmland in this town. Our parents and our grandparents paid a lot of money to keep it that way. And I think most of you like living in Vernon. It's not Brattleboro. Brattleboro used to have some good farms.
Mr. Teets.
Can we call the question?
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded, we cease debate. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You cease debate. Again, we're going to vote by paper ballot with the B.C.A. grabbing the ballot box. If you are in favor of the farmland preservation article, vote yes. If you are opposed, please vote no. I declare the ballot box open. Whichever you have. There are some different colors here, so whatever color you have, make it fly. Polls are open. Has everybody voted? If not, we're going to close the polls. Polls are closed now. The BCA will count when we continue with the meeting. Let's get it on. We're going to move to Article number 25. We're back in order. Article 25, shall the voters appropriate a sum of $20,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Vernon Farmland Protection Fund. Mr. Unruh, since Mrs. Harris is up there, could you do the motion, please?
Go ahead.
Oh. Okay, Jean, go ahead.
I move that the voters appropriate a sum of $20,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Vernon Farmland Protection Fund.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded, the voters appropriate a sum of $20,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Vernon Farmland Protection Fund. Is there discussion on the motion? Mr. Miller.
Yeah, the Farmland Protection Committee is just trying to get a pulse here from the town. Obviously, the last 3 years, we voted, if this previous article is passed, we voted roughly $200,000 to protect farmland here in town in the last 3 years. As I mentioned earlier, we currently, if this passes, we'll have roughly $190,000 left in the fund. So basically, we feel that we ought to start replenishing the fund. Currently, there are no other, we have not been approached by any other land to be protected at this point, but that does come up. For many years, you'll remember we voted $25,000 as a town pretty regularly to fund this, to support this fund. The last couple of years, we have not put in those requests because we thought we had enough money in there, but we do think we ought to evaluate how much money ought to be in the town, and we ought to probably start refunding this account.
Further discussion on the article. Mr. Unruh.
Can we suspend talking about this until we get a count from the vote?
If you would like, your motion would be that we table further discussion until after we get a count on Article 24. Is that what I heard you say, sir?
Yes.
All right. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor of Mr. Unruh's motion to table further consideration of Article 25 until we get a count on Article 24, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. Article 25 is temporarily on hold. In fact, we may have the answer here as the judges have spoken. Please listen to the results of your vote on Article 24, the Farmland Protection Article. Voting yes, 78. Voting no, 29. I declare that Article 24 has been passed. And before we can continue on Article 25, I'll give you the vote on Article 22 to catch us up. On the Human Service Funding, Senior Solutions, $800. Yes, 59. No, 50. Healthcare and Rehabilitation Services, $1,850. Yes, 58. No, 52. The current, $125. Yes, 51. No, 70. And Visiting Nurses and Hospice of Vermont and New Hampshire, yes, 76. And no, 34. So I declare Senior Solutions, Healthcare and Rehabilitation Services, and Visiting Nurses and Hospice will be funded. So, unless there's objection, we'll continue with consideration of Article 25. Further discussion on the article. Seeing Mr. Gant,
I'm quite surprised that we are ending up in the exact same situation that we were 3 years ago. We are voting yes to spend money at every corner. We have raised the police, we have raised the library, we are now mandating donations again. Please vote this down. I love living in a farm town, I do, but we can't afford to be putting out any more money right now and continue to raise taxes. Thank you.
Further discussion on the article? Seeing none, Mr. Hicks and Ms. Freeman, in fact, you two can fight over which one you want to be first in line.
Please.
Very gallant for this late hour.
So is it ladies before gentlemen or age before beauty?
Ms. Freeman, you have the floor. Or Mr. Hicks, you have the floor. Somebody has the floor.
Jessica Freeman Erb. I'd like to disagree that we can't afford to fund this, and I would like to say that I don't think we can afford not to fund this. And I now am a member of the Vernon Planning and Economic Development Board, and we spent a lot of time talking in our town plan about what does our town value. And we talked a lot about how our town values agriculture and our history of agriculture, and I know that's part of the reason I live here. I went away to college and I came back, and that was a big part of it. I liked my hometown. I liked seeing the cows. My 3-year-old, every single cow we passed, Mom, cow. Every horse we passed, horses. You know how many times you hear cow and horses on the way to Brattleboro? About 20. But I like that. And so I'd like to say, if we as a town value having farmland and living in that type of community, then we have to pony up the money to keep that kind of community protected. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Mr. Hicks.
Well, yes, it's always about money. The overriding part of this is it's really a vote about who we are in this town. What do we want this town to be? What are our core values that bind us together as a town? It's surprising to me, for the first time, I think, in many a year, we actually voted tonight to give money to private services. We haven't done that for many, many years. And that's the beginning of reestablishing our community as one who cares both inside the town and outside. And I certainly hope that we will vote for this.
Further discussion on Article 25? Seeing none. The motion is that voters appropriate a sum of $20,000 to be raised by taxes to fund the previously established Vernon Farmland Protection Fund. All those in favor of the article as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The ayes apparently have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 25. Article 26, shall the voters authorize payment of real and personal property taxes to the town treasurer in 3 installments, with the due dates being September 12th, 2019, January 16th, 2020, and May 7th of 2020. Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters authorize payment of real and personal property taxes to the town treasurer in 3 installments, with due dates being September 12th, 2019, January 16th, 2020, and May 7th, 2020.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded, voters authorize payment of real and personal property taxes to the town treasurer in 3 installments, with due dates being September 12th, 2019, January 16th, 2020, and May 7th of 2020. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 26 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You passed Article 26. Article 27. Shall the voters approve the provision of the notice of availability of the town report and auditor's report by postcard mailed to all registered voters at least 30 days prior to town meeting, in lieu of the mailing or otherwise distributing the town report and auditor's report as authorized by Vermont Law 24 V.S.A. subsection 1682A2? Is there a motion?
Mr. Moderator, I move that the voters approve the provision of notice of availability of the town report and auditor's report by postcard mailed to all registered voters at least 30 days prior to town meeting, in lieu of mailing or otherwise distributing the town report and auditor's report as authorized by Vermont Law and 24 V.S.A. section 1682A2.
Is there a second? Moved and seconded that the voters approve the provision of notice of availability of the town report and auditor's report by postcard mailed to all registered voters at least 30 days prior to town meeting in lieu of mailing or otherwise distributing the town report and auditor's report is authorized by Vermont Law in 24 V.S.A. Section 1682A2. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of Article 27 as read, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. You've passed Article 27. Article 28, to discuss any non-binding business, and this cannot be anything that is binding upon the town, the voters, or the select board. Ms. Vergovi.
I've been a little bit surprised by how we voted tonight. I don't know if it's good or bad, but one of the things that I always forget about before the warning and everything over the last couple of years is the John Cusack scholarship funding. And I just wanted to put it out there that I would like to see that article on the warning for next year. Like I said, what we voted on this year has surprised me. You know, I think we all, when VY closed, we were like, cut everything, cut everything, cut everything. And now we're seeing those spending levels come back up. And that's one of the things that I would like to see revisited next year. So it's mostly just a note for the town administrator and the select board that I'd like to see that article on the warning for next year. I might be alone, but.
It's the James Cusack Scholarship Fund. John Cusack was an actor.
Right.
James Cusack was a former school superintendent.
Thank you very much.
Any further discussion under Article 28? Just a couple of announcements then from your moderator. One is that there are plenty of sales tomorrow during voting hours at Town Hall. Historians are selling food and other items. There's a basket raffle for the Vernon Preschool, and the Girl Scouts are selling Girl Scout cookies. Please support them. And finally, one of our own is going through a difficult time. Peter Brown is facing some cancer surgery. In this very building, on the 16th of March, there is a spaghetti supper benefit beginning at 6, going till 9 p.m. There's also some basket raffle items that are going on there. Please support him either by showing up at the event or giving something, and if you ask me, I'll be able to tell you how to get the money to him. So please do that. At this time, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved and seconded that we adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed, nay. We've adjourned the Vernon Town meeting at 10:25 p.m. Have a good night.